It's a big one today. For some, it is a day that dreams are solidified and made. For others, it is a day where you just hope that you don't get a knock on the door and that the coach isn't requesting a playbook. It is roster official day, if you will. 4 o'clock today, correct, Eddie Garrison?
Yep, that's accurate, Jake.
4 o'clock today is when the Indianapolis Colts and the other teams of the National Football League must make their 53-man roster official, get the decisions in. There are already some names that are being leaked out there, if you will, or being announced as those who have not made the roster for the 2025 Indianapolis Colts. And there are a couple, actually, that are of some surprise. We will get to that in just a moment, but let's start by saying good afternoon to you, and thank you for listening to Query & Company. My name is Jake Query. Eddie Garrison, the other voice that you just heard on this program. And I want to thank, right off the top, not just Chicago's Pizza down in Greenwood for hosting us yesterday for our Query & Company Fantasy Football Draft, but also those who showed up. And it was fun. It was great to meet everybody and shoot the bull, and some took longer than others to make their selection, but for the most part, really a pretty quick draft and fabulous pizza to be had. And the one thing, Eddie, that I will say yesterday in doing that, and this is something for which I am most appreciative and grateful, and that is we just got a lot of good dudes that listen to this radio show.
Yes,
you know
we
what
do.
I mean?
Yes, we do.
You know, everybody got along and cracked a couple jokes, and you know, for the most part, it's pretty quiet though. I was like, this is like a legitimate war room. Everybody was hunkered down over their laptop, their phone, or whatever else, making their picks.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was, but somebody walked in, and they're like, I thought this would have been much louder back here.
It was Brian that came in.
Yeah.
Brian was a great guy. And really enjoyed talking to him. Talked to him for a while in the parking lot afterwards, and enjoyed that. And really everybody, sitting there. Derek was great. Derek, who is a North Central Panther, was there. Casey is there, the pride of Martinsville. It was great, just shooting the bull with everybody and getting the selections made. So thank you for all who came out for that, and we will certainly keep everybody up to speed on what happens with our fantasy league over the course of the year. But let's get right to it, Eddie. If you happen to have the breaking news sounder, we will get to it. This through the combination of essentially Joel A. Erickson as well as James Boyd. They are the first two that have reported most of these. These players apparently have not made the roster for the Colts this year. All of this within the last couple of hours. Wesley French, that's a bit of a surprise to me because, what do I say? Cell phone chargers, and sunglasses. That's offensive line and defensive backs. You can never have too many. And Wesley French is a guy that I think can play kind of a variety of areas on the offensive line for the Colts. And it looks like Wesley French not going to be on the roster. He also has had injury issue, don't get me wrong, during the time as a Colt. But he is one that did not make the roster. Coleman Owen, Trey Washington, Austin Ajaki, the linebacker. Linebacker's an interesting one, especially in Lou Anarumo's defense, because it feels like it has become – devalued position is maybe the wrong way of saying it, but simply a position that is more fungible perhaps than it used to be. It looks like Jalen Carlisle could go to IR with the opportunity to return. And then I think the big one so far, and that's the fact that Jelani Woods, the tight end, we kind of knew this was going to be the case, but it looks like in a very crowded and parallel among player to an extent of what they bring to the table, looks like the odd man out is going to be Jelani Woods for the tight ends. He is not going to make the roster, it would appear. Now, question also becomes, Eddie, and we had talked about it. For example, Riley Leonard, and maybe I'm making too much of this because I don't think Riley Leonard is a guy that they are intending to have take a single snap this year. But if Riley Leonard showed enough that the Colts simply want to get a better look for future purposes, just in a depth role, if that's the case with Riley Leonard, then that could come at the expense of a roster spot elsewhere, and it is perhaps the case, maybe not with Jelani Woods, but say Wesley French. Is that a position where it looked like he was going to make the roster, and then they're like, you know what, we want to make sure that we are protecting, say, at the quarterback spot 3 deep. So we need a roster spot somewhere, and then boom, that becomes expendable. I'm using simply the quarterback as an example there, but you get what I'm saying, right?
Mm-hmm. I get what you're saying, yeah. And I don't know, like, are we wasting our time talking about it, Jake? That's the biggest question I have. Like, I understand that some fans out there will be like, hey, this guy should have a chance of being the QB2 behind Anthony Richardson, but you also have to keep in mind this, Jake. The Colts felt the need to rest Richardson in that final preseason game so that either he didn't get hurt because he's valuable to them at some point during the regular season, or just because of the fact they didn't want him to get hurt and rely on Sam Ehlinger being your backup quarterback.
You mean Riley Leonard?
That's what I meant, yes. Sorry.
Or let me throw you option 3. The Colts have relegated themselves to the fact that there's nothing else to see out of Anthony Richardson because they know what he is.
Maybe.
And I again, I'm going to go with this. I'm going to go with this. To be contrarian to your point, because I'm not saying you're wrong. I mean, we don't know. But I do believe this. And younger me would not have said this because I would have been like, or rather would not have admitted when I was wrong. I'm going to make a statement, and I will gladly admit if I am wrong in this, because I'm not saying I want to be right. And I want to make very clear here, I have nothing but tea leaves. I have nothing to base this on but phone calls and footlockers. But I'm sure, I am as sure as the fact that today is Tuesday. I am sure about this as I am the fact that it is a beautiful day outside. I'm as sure of this as I am about the fact that everybody enjoyed the Chicago's pizza last night. I am sure of the fact that the Colts have come to the conclusion that Anthony Richardson is what he is. I think they are past the point of waiting. If they thought there was something there to be a long-term quarterback for them, he would be on the field. You could go from, if Anthony Richardson, you put him out there because you still feel that there is untapped potential and he doesn't play well, you can go to Daniel Jones at that point, and Daniel Jones can still get you what you're going to get out of him because he's been around, he's been a starter, he's been a backup, all of it. Richardson, because of where and how you acquired him as a top 5 pick, and I know that he's young. I get all of that. I totally get it. But if they thought there was a glimmer of something that could be had out of him, he would be on the field. Because I don't know how you go to Richardson now in any way other than he is strictly the backup to keep the seat warm until Daniel Jones is again available. Now, I say that, and I understand things change if Daniel Jones goes out and in week 3 suffers a knee injury where he's going to be out 5 weeks, and then Richardson comes in and suddenly becomes, the guy that they thought he was going to be. That changes things. I get that. But I truly think that at this point the Colts have resigned themselves into believing that that player is not there and that they can't get it out of him. No one has told me that. I hope I'm wrong. I just don't know how you can conclude when you look at this anything other than that. And I go back to this point, which I've made before, but I'll make it again. Realistically, at the time that Anthony Richardson was selected and at the time that Anthony Richardson became a starter as a rookie, the person who was making every last final decision where the buck stopped was with the late, great Jim Irsay. In the time that Jim Irsay has been the highest rung total voice of authority within the Colts organization, they have had 2 previous players that were selected as quarterbacks within the top 4 picks that they handed the keys to. And it's Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. And Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck have one thing in common. Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck were bottle-fed by guys that had an NFL playbook in the other hand. Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck were tucked into bed by guys that got home late that night because they were in the film room. Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck went to bed listening to, watching, or analyzing with a flashlight once the parents said it was time to turn the lights out, plays that their dad were running in the NFL or in college. In Andrew Luck's case, he was following his dad to Europe in the World League and watching the World League of American Football that his dad was in charge of. And then they went to college, both Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck, and played a ton of college games. And when they got to the NFL, they were plug and ready to play. Now, that's not to say they didn't struggle. Peyton Manning in particular, he threw more interceptions as a rookie than any quarterback in the history of the NFL. But Peyton Manning knew from the time he came out of the womb, he saw when Peyton Manning was like 2 years old, he was interviewed by some TV guy that says, look, Peyton, who's your favorite player? My dad. He'd been around the NFL his entire life. And I think that Jim Irsay, at no fault of Jim Irsay, I understand it, but I think that Jim Irsay just thought, see, when you have a player that is a top 5 pick, you've got the only way to prepare them is to throw them to the Wolves. And Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck could handle that because they are the 0.001% of players that had that sort of a pedigree. And Anthony Richardson wasn't ready for it. And they threw him out there, and it didn't go well, and he didn't learn because he was sitting there just trying to count the arrows flying past him. And then they said, okay, now we're going to put you on the sideline and have you watch from there. And then he came back in, and then he had, he got hurt and the helmet tap and all that. There's just too much history there. And I truly do believe that they now have come to that conclusion. This is our guy. And then Richardson, and we'll see. Richardson may well be the starter by week 5, or I don't think he'll be traded, but he could be, right? A million ways that you can look at it. And Eddie, let me ask you this, by the way. I wore this last night for the draft, and I'm curious. I'm wearing, how would you describe the jacket that I'm wearing? Is it just
It's an Adidas jacket, Jake, with your Oasis.
Well, but I mean, is it do you list this as
left
a
pec
sweat jacket, like a zip up, a hoodie?
Warm-up jacket?
Warm-up jacket, okay. So here's what I want to know. Which looks better? You are the hip, fashionable guy. Okay?
Oh, shoot. Really?
When it comes to these collars, the zip-up collars, I'd like to know this, Eddie. Here you go. You ready? You have option number 1. And option number 1.
Zip down.
Zip down, but the collar's up. Option 2 is you take the collars and you go like 70s with it, and you try to mat it down like this. Okay? Can you see option 2?
Doesn't really stay down, but yeah. Okay.
It doesn't? Okay. And then option 3 is the zip all the way up against the bottom of the chin like that.
Option 1.
Option 1 is that's the Tom Selleck look?
Either that or you go a combination between 1 and 3 where it's like half zipped.
Right there?
Yeah, no. 1.
Okay. Anyway, I realize it makes for great radio. But we will, over the course of today, here's the bottom line. Over the course of today, between now and 4 o'clock, there are probably going to be more whispers, more inklings, more leaks of players that are going to be released for the Colts. And usually the Colts in the past, if precedent is any indication, we're going to know at like 5:30 what their roster is. Wasn't it last year? Am I hallucinating here? Somebody help me out. Was it last year where they were literally like the last team to announce their roster? Am I correct in that?
Very well could have been.
I think that's right. I mean, I think last year it was literally 8 o'clock before, like, people were like, what is going on here? What, what's taking so long? And then finally they announced it. But we'll see what other surprises are out there. Are there any other players, Eddie, that you look at and you go, you know what? It would not surprise me if this one is a quote-unquote surprise.
On the Colts roster?
Yes.
Probably not. Not at this point. It just felt like it was pretty easy to predict who would be, waived or released or whatever the proper terminology is, and there's not really anybody. They did just release Chris Lamont. That's not surprising. They did bring him on late in training camp, but that's just another one. I haven't really seen any guys that, was like, oh.
Wesley French surprised me a little bit, right?
Maybe. I mean, you've got Bortolini and Pinter.
Yeah, I get that. But
Pinter's a little bit more flexible. You can play center or guard.
No, that's true. But, okay, what about this situation, though? And this is where it's because Pinter can play a couple of different positions, and I know that you're getting this, maybe gets a little too dangerous to start analyzing it in these sort of hypotheticals. But what about the fact, let's say that there is a game or a situation later in the year, let's say Bortolini gets hurt, rolls his ankle, and Pinter is already giving you relief on another area of the line. Do you have, then you put Pinter in at center, you've got to then get other players that give depth behind Pinter at other spots, right? I just think French gives you, because he is a guy that has experience on the line, my personal thought is, and maybe he doesn't have good experience on the line, but my personal thought is that is a position where I would rather, I just don't think you can have too many.
Dalton Tucker, who can probably play both
fair
guard positions. And that probably means
he struggled last year at times, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they all did. The line, offensive line to me.
It just makes you wonder also, Jake, is there going to be a guy that they have out there that's, either a linebacker or offensive line that they, make another trade like they did yesterday where it's like a later round, day 3 pick, if it's a 5th, 6th, or 7th round pick that of a guy that could be cut that they like, that they want to add for depth purposes.
So they went out and we were sitting there in the middle of our draft, and all of a sudden Eddie says, the Colts just made a trade. And everybody got excited, right?
Like, oh, yeah, who?
And you're like, they just locked in Blackman in the defensive backfield. It was like, Julian? And it's not, right?
Nope. Mekhi Blackman, former third-round pick out of USC. Rookie year was 2023. He missed last year with a torn ACL, but was promising in his rookie year. 41 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, an interception, and a fumble recovery. Started 3 games for Minnesota.
But he played in virtually all of them as a rookie, right?
Yeah, played 15 games, got 3 starts.
So he was probably, and he's smaller than this, but he's kind of like, what would you say, like maybe what Isaiah Rodgers was for the Colts as a rookie? A depth piece that got his number called from time to time. But what's curious about that, again, and we talked about it yesterday with Mike Chappell, when the roster comes down to 53, that's the 53 that are announced on that day. That does not mean that's the 53 that you're going to have to start week 1, because they will make changes as other players are released. They're going to find guys that they go, okay, well, that's, and this, Blackman is an example of somebody that you give up a 6th rounder for him. Is that because they feel that they simply need depth at that position? Is that because they simply are anticipating that somebody maybe still is dinged up and not going to be able to go and they want to have an insurance policy there? Or is it because they just don't like what they've seen out of guys? Those are all questions that eventually Chris Ballard will answer, I would assume. But it is curious that is listen, I'm not opposed to it. I'm not opposed to it anytime you go out and get yourself depth at that position, because I think it's just an area where you can use it. And in addition to that, Chris Ballard, when it comes to the corner area, I'll give him benefit of the doubt. I don't think that Ballard has been a great talent evaluator in terms of defensive line or pass rush, because if you look at players that he has taken in high position, Dio comes to mind. He was a good player, but again, you try to keep your own in-house if you find them to be beyond simply a good player. And, that's one that obviously they let go. But if you look at the resources that he has put into defensive line seemingly over and over each and every year, that's one area where I don't know that he's gotten it right. But at corner, I go back to a year ago. Corner and safety both. They took chances on guys like Nick Cross, who they took as a third-rounder, and they did so based strictly on his athleticism. They loved the fact that he had range and was a great athlete, but hadn't instinctively learned the position yet. And there were a couple of other areas maybe where the eyebrow was raised. But Ballard, to me, does earn benefit of the doubt based on this. It was a year ago when he said, and I'm paraphrasing, look, I have a defensive back and secondary room that in order to properly evaluate and determine who all of these guys are and what I have, they got to play. I got to let them play. And so when we were a year ago going, who are these guys? It was like the movie Major League. Who are these guys? They went out, and I thought, when healthy, some of those guys played well. I really like Juju Brents. I do. And I hope he makes the roster because health has been an issue there, and we haven't gotten a chance for him to really show what he can do. But I like him. I think he's got good size. I know when I say he has good range, I sound like Mel Kiper. I don't want to sound like Mel Kiper. I like Mel Kiper, but I don't want to sound like Mel Kiper. Whatever happened to that Todd McShay, Eddie?
Oh, Todd.
Didn't he get? I know that he had some personal struggles, but is he still with ESPN?
No, he was with the Raiders for a while, for a few years as their GM.
Todd McShay from ESPN?
Wait, who am I thinking of? No, I'm thinking of the guy from NFL Network.
Because Todd McShay is the one that was everywhere. And ESPN does this a lot, and then seemingly he was like invisible. But we later found out, I think he had some personal challenges. I don't begrudge him for that. I mean, I wish him the best for that. But when that happened, he was kind of phased out. And then, I feel like for a while there, he was or wasn't brought back. I don't know. But
either way, it was Mayock. That's who I was thinking of. That
Mike
was with
Mayock. Yeah, of course.
Mike Mayock was the Raiders. Yeah.
But either way, I think that Ballard gets some credit with defense. So when he goes out and makes a trade on the eve of the roster being finalized and gives up a 6th-round pick for a guy that might be able to give them some. I mean, you would hope. If you draft a player in round number 6.
Todd McShay's with the Ringer now.
The Ringer?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When you draft a guy in the 6th round, if you were to say, hey, listen, this 6th-round pick that you had is going to play and appear in 8 games, start one of them, and take 40% of the snaps in the other 7 games, you'd probably take that. 6th rounder, he makes the roster. That's what he does. That's cool. So if you can spend a 6th rounder for a guy that goes out and brings you that much back, I think you're in pretty good shape. But we shall see what happens with that. The Fever in action coming up Seattle, correct, Eddie?
Yes, tonight at home, Gamebridge Fieldhouse. A big one, big week for the Indiana Fever, Jake.
It is a big week, and the injuries just keep piling up. And there are just a lot of question marks. And for those questions, we turn to the one that would know best. Stephanie White joins us as she has been nice enough to do each and every week during the WNBA season. That conversation next. Stephen Holder on the program coming up about 35 minutes from now. About 20 minutes from now, a dude I met over the weekend that I said to myself, dude, I do a radio show and you got to come on. And he said, let's go. And I thought to myself, this guy's instant party. That conversation in about 20. But Stephanie White, Fever, right now, things kind of hanging in the balance for that postseason. They got to right that ship, but they got to get healthy. A lot of question marks, a lot of questions. Hopefully answers next. It's not on a big old jet airliner, but rather right here at home. In other words, the Fever aren't taking a plane to their next game. They are at home tonight, taking on the Seattle Storm. 7 o'clock tip. You can hear it right here on this radio station. And for those of you who are inevitably clamoring for more Eddie Garrison on your radio airwaves, no worries. 6:45 pregame. Eddie will have that duty before the game tonight. Joining us now on the program is the head coach of the Indiana Fever, Stephanie White, who requested Steve Miller last week when we talked to her. I guess I'll begin with this. When you were in high school, true or false, Indiana Miss Basketball Stephanie White, while driving to school, would be listening to Steve Miller and thought for certain that he was actually saying, "Big old jet got a light on." Yes or no?
No. What? Who said jet? Who said get a light on?
You've never heard, as people always say, one of the most common. So let me ask you this. Give me a song that you were singing along to the radio your entire life, and then once like the advent of the Apple iPhone lists the lyrics, you were like, oh my gosh, that's what the lyrics are? I've been doing it wrong all this time. There has to be one.
You got to remember, like back in those days, like the internet dial-up didn't even come into play until I was in college. So by the time we got to the Apple iPhone, the lyrics coming across the Apple iPhone, I mean, that was just recently for me, right? Like I'm so old school.
Oh, it's mind blowing. I know.
But I'm trying to think. There have been a number. Probably "Tell Me What You Want" in Spice Girls, right? If you want to be something like that.
Okay. There's our song for next week.
Exactly. All of those that go really fast and they kind of run together. But jet airliner, no, because I don't know if you remember this, but I majored in aviation in college.
Oh.
And so I was always like flying was always my thing. So the jet airliner was definitely not one of those.
No way. Okay, because those of us that don't have the intellect of majoring in aviation always thought that it was not always, not a lot, but there are people that joke that they sing along to it saying "big old jet got a light on," because that's what it sounds like he's saying. Now I'm curious, when you flew planes, because obviously for that program, coach at Purdue, you had to do like solo flights, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. More turbulence, your first solo flight or the injury report for the Fever of the last 6 weeks?
The injury report for the Fever over the last 6 weeks, no doubt.
When you are flying a plane and there's turbulence, everybody says to me that's a pilot. They're like, look, turbulence, Jake, like as a passenger, I know it's unnerving, but like it's not as smaller planes. I realize it's a little bit, trickier, but when you are coaching, and I know we talked about this last week, you have to do this navigation of treading through in what really has been almost unprecedented within this franchise of the number of players that you've lost, but it's all been kind of in the same area in your backcourt. So let's begin with this. Caitlin Clark, I know now, is starting to kind of work out again. If you had to target or benchmark where you are hoping to be the area where she could return to gameplay, it would be when?
I mean, we still haven't had a full practice with her on the floor, and ideally we'd like to get about 5 of those practices in just to make sure endurance level, movement patterns, physicality, all of those things are there for her. So that's got to happen. And so this week on the road when we're out west and being able to get some of those practices in is going to be critical.
And I realize that, when it comes to injuries, you're not the team trainer. I understand that, Stephanie, and I can't remember if we talked about this last week, but when you are looking at the overall movement and just Caitlin Clark reacclimating physically back into the game, originally it was a groin injury. Then we now know that there was a bone bruise, I think, in the ankle area. Is it one area versus the other that you guys are targeting in terms of looking at in terms of her comfort level?
I mean, I think that for her right now, I'm mostly focused on as a coach, endurance. Because being able to get up and down the floor and run not just in straight lines, but run in movement patterns that she's going to have to withstand 94 feet pressure, handling the ball, being able to move on the defensive end of the floor. What I don't want as a coach is if she's not ready from an endurance standpoint, that they're setting her up for more injury. I mean, she hasn't played ball in 2 months. And so while the athletic training staff might be looking at how quickly she's firing from a muscle standpoint or how sharp her movements are from the bone bruise standpoint, I want to make sure that she's physically fit enough to withstand the pressure that she's going to have throughout the course of however many minutes she's able to play in a ball game without setting her back. Because again, I think from that perspective, it's the long-term health and wellness is the most important thing, and making sure that we're not going to put her in a position that she's not ready to succeed in.
When you look at the players that you have been able to acquire and plug in, as you have lost players, and again, primarily in your backcourt, right? When you look at what Odyssey Sims, Shea Petty, Ariel Powers have been able to do for you, do you have to alter at all the style of play that you're hoping or that you have become accustomed as a franchise to play because of the new faces? Or is it, hey, this is how we play and this is how we want you guys to be able to continue playing as you yourselves gel with this new team?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, certainly we have to scale back. We've got to simplify. At this time of the year, you'd typically be tweaking, adjusting, changing the framework of what you do in terms of the way that it presents, in alignments and things like that. And we're teaching. We're teaching, 2 or 3 secondary actions that we can run, 2 or 3 things that we can get in the offense, because we're talking about primary ball handlers specific to Shea Petty and Odyssey Sims, who have not been in training camp since April, who we're just throwing into the fire right now. So instead of tweaking and adjusting and adding, we're simplifying and we're going back to basics. And so we do it from that standpoint. But also we have to find a way as coaches to put those guys in positions to be successful, because they're different than Cece and Ari and Sid. And so being able to do a little bit of both, allowing them to do what they do instinctually and naturally, because that's how we're going to find success at this point for them, as well as integrating them into what we have found success with as a team. And so trying to find those things, and then building the chemistry and continuity in those actions. I think Odyssey has had 3 practices and Shay's had 2 practices, and Ariel got her first one yesterday. So that's kind of the situation that we're in right now. And thankfully those 3 have had experience in our league and have been able to come in and be impactful. And now it's just how quickly can we get it gelled and get it moving.
Do you believe in momentum?
I do.
As do I. I know some people do not, especially in the course of a game. There's 2 kinds of momentum, Coach. There's game momentum, where you can just kind of feel things for one side or the other, and then there's in-season momentum.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at, and I realize that injuries have been a major part of this,
yeah.
But when you look at the way that your team is playing, or right now having the playoffs kind of hanging in that balance, you're a game over 500, you got 7 tough ones left. How do you manage or manipulate the momentum?
Yeah, I don't know if you can manipulate it at all. But I even think back to these last 2 games against Minnesota, and for the most part in the game, we had some momentum. It's when you give it away to really good teams for those 4 to 5 minute segments, they make you pay. And Minnesota did that to us. Obviously, they're the best team in the league for a reason. But I was pleased really with how we played on the offensive end of the floor. I mean, I thought we were efficient. I thought we were effective. We got good shots. Sometimes they went in, sometimes they didn't. It then becomes the defensive end of the floor and the consistency with that. So I do feel like this next week is a really great opportunity for us to gain some of that momentum. Certainly starting with tonight against Seattle, and then we go out on the road and having a couple of days with this group to be able to have a couple games and a practice day to be able to build some of that. It's a critical time for us. There's no doubt about it. This team has been able to show that they can put us in positions to win. And now we've got to be able to get connected to gain that momentum and be consistent on both ends of the floor.
By the way, your degree from Purdue is in communications. Is that correct?
It is, yes. 2 years in aviation and then 2 years in communication.
Okay, so
how about that?
Okay,
and still graduating in 4 years.
So wait a minute. Does that mean? And I'm just curious. Does that mean essentially that you looked at it? And I'm not taking anything away from your efforts, but the aviation. Did you get 2 years into that and then say, this is really time consuming? I want to do something that like a monkey could do and talk on the radio. Is that what this means?
That is not. I actually got 2 years into it and realized it was much more of a hobby than a career opportunity. And then changed to communications, having no idea what I wanted to do, certainly. But yes, it was not physical education, but it was communications, right?
What's the, and pardon my naivete on this, right? with flight aviation, how far? I assume that's a 4-year program, correct? Obviously.
Yes. Mhm.
So if you were 2 years into it, did you get into the actual substance of it, or were you still doing mostly prereqs? In other words, did you do much flying?
Of course, we did flying on day one. I had my license in first semester.
Really? Now, how long
Yeah.
does that license hold up? Do you still have it?
I have a license, but I'm not current. You have to go up every 3 months. Well, at that time it was every 3 months to stay current. And after I graduated from college, I still went up while I was in college with my buddies from flight school, and then a little bit after college. But after I got into coaching and finished playing, I hadn't done that. But by the time I finished, I had not. When you get into that, year 3, year 4, you're talking multi-engine rating and then jet ratings, and then you're deciding whether you want to go the commercial route or the private route. And I did not get into any of that.
So what's the biggest plane that you flew, and if you did solo, that you did solo?
Single engines, like single engine Cessnas, Pipers.
So what's the furthest distance you flew?
When you do solo fights, they're pretty regional. So I think the furthest one I did was from Purdue to Bloomington Normal, Illinois, up to Kalamazoo, Michigan, and then back to Purdue.
I mean, that's pretty impressive. Did you find, and I know that this sounds really dumb to ask, okay, but in any way, shape, or form, did being an athlete help you with that, or vice versa, because of the fact that, like, if you're reading instruments and whatever else, you've got to make quick decisions, your mind has to process things. Did in any way, shape, or form one parlay to the other?
It did, and doing things under pressure. Like I remember there was one, they call them cross-country flights. You're not really going across the country. One flight that I had to Bloomington Normal and back, and my alternator went out. And so being able to just stay calm under pressure, be able to go through the checklist of, hey, let's try to get this back. Let's see what's happening here, to be able to communicate or not communicate with tower and go through the entire process. Being able to stay calm under pressure and being an athlete and being in those situations certainly helped as well.
My alternator goes out, I go to AutoZone, right? I'm not radioing into people to find out how to fly a plane. I mean, that truly is remarkable, though. And then my last thing on this, and I promise we'll get back to basketball before we wrap here. Did you find that most of the classmates that you had, do most of them go? I think we think to ourselves like, oh, you go on from there and you either fly for like FedEx or American Airlines. But when you look at simple stuff in terms of like agricultural aviation and things like that, is it all across the board in terms of those opportunities?
It is all across the board. And now a majority of them do go commercial airline or private and charters. And in fact, sometimes I would be flying with places that I was coaching, and some of our charter flight pilots would be people that I went to flight school with. And so yeah, there's a lot of different areas that you can go into and different directions that you can go. And, usually by sophomore year, you're making those decisions. And as you go into junior year, you're making those decisions and where you want to go. Now, that was back in the old days. That might be accelerated now.
My sophomore year of college, I learned how to balance my checkbook. My parents were so proud. Meanwhile, you're radioing in alternator problems in Bloomington Normal and dealing with it. Very impressive. All right, 7 o'clock tonight. It is Seattle and the Fever at the Field House as Indiana. One more time, Coach, in terms of Caitlin Clark, I want to recap this. You'd like to see 5 practices out of her and to see that endurance before you then try to put her back out on the floor in a game situation, correct?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the endurance piece, we want to get her into 5 practices before we put her out there in a game for sure, just to see where she is and handling the level of physicality, and making sure that she's ready.
And she's had how many so far?
No live practices so far. I mean,
Gotcha.
everything that we've done has been basically like a shoot around.
Walkthroughs and that kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Coach. Best of luck. We appreciate the time as always.
Thank you. Thanks, Jake.
All right, Stephanie White joining us on the program. We come back. I was walking Pitt Road over the weekend and saw a guy standing there, and I thought, this guy looks fun. I wonder what his story is, and talked to him and immediately said, dude, I do a radio show in Indy. I want you to come on real quick and share your story. And he said, no problem. That's because he's from Wisconsin, and I'm making fun of the way people talk up there, but he does have a Wisconsin accent. But I promise it'll be a fun story. We will get to that coming up. And Stephen Holder, what time today for Stephen, Eddie?
We are chatting with the ESPN.com reporter for the Colts in 15 minutes.
All right, sounds good. weekend, I was in Milwaukee for the IndyCar race. Christian Rasmussen gets the win. But I'm walking around, and I see this guy. I kept kind of bumping into this guy, and he looked like he was having a good time. It's certain people you see, and I always say, you can always tell when you meet people. There's two kinds of guys in this world, those with the program and those that aren't. And you can just tell when a dude is with the program, and you're like, that guy is the life of the party. And he's wearing a Santino Ferrucci shirt, and he's walking around, and he looks very official. He's got a headset on. So finally I asked somebody, I say, who's the new crew chief for Santino Ferrucci? And they said, oh, no, that's not Ferrucci. And they explained what he's doing there. And I said, that is fabulous. And I went up and talked to him and immediately said, this guy's fun. So he joins us now on the show. Doug Gilman is his name. He is a native of Wisconsin. And when I say native of Wisconsin, folks, I'm telling you, this guy's like Badger through and through. I don't know if he's a Badger fan or a Marquette fan, so I guess we'll start with that. Doug, which Wisconsin team do you pull for?
Always the Badgers. Always the Badgers.
That's a rite of passage in Wisconsin, is it not?
Unless you actually go to school at Marquette, I would say 95 of us percent of us are Badger fans.
Okay, and then obviously it goes without saying. And fortunately, I didn't see you strip down to your skivvies, but if you did, most of you is green and gold, right? Because you're a Packer fan.
Especially this time of the year, man. Yeah, kind of born and raised and baptized and grew up at Lambeau Field. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I want to get to this. How in the world did you become a guy? And I know this answer, but I want you to share it with fans here of the radio program. How in the world did you end up wearing a headset and following around Santino Ferrucci for the weekend at Milwaukee?
Well, last year or this past June up at Elkhart Lake at Road America, after the race, Santino, who finished third, ran out of fuel, literally pretty much coming to the checkered flag, and kind of coasted the car down to the bottom of turn one and shut the car off and got out of the car. And that day, if any of your viewers remember, was almost 100 degrees up in Wisconsin. And for middle of June, that's really hot. And he got out of the car and just absolutely looked exhausted and took a minute or two to catch his breath. And then, it's a good quarter of a mile from the bottom of turn one, back to pit lane. So he just kind of started walking by the fans and everybody's kind of, waving to him, and he's kind of interacting just a little bit. And a fan about 30 feet down from me asked him if he wanted a bottle of water. And he kind of waved it over, and the guy chucked it over the fence, and it landed about, 20 feet from Santino, burst everywhere. He only got a gulp or two. And I kind of looked over at my dad. I go, I think he'd want a beer. So I yelled, hey, Santino, would you like a beer? And he waved it over, and kind of all in the split second, I just reached into the cooler, grabbed one, and kind of grenade chucked it over the fence. And the guy made a phenomenal catch. I mean, I said, man, we could sign him up for the Packers. And, just kind of pounded it. And, and I just thought that was it, whatever, that's cool. And here to come to find out that, there was a Fox, live camera, at the bottom of turn one, and they actually caught the whole thing live after the race. And it just kind of went from there. So, the team eventually, I just did a simple post. I'm not a big social media guy. I'm 47 years old. I'm not a big, TikToker or whatever. And it got picked up on Fox Sports and IndyCar's Facebook and stuff. And I just did a simple comment like, hey, what an awesome race. And, oh, by the way, I was the guy that threw Santino the beer. And it just kind of went from there. And a couple days later, the amazing ladies at Foyt Racing reached out to me, and it just kind of all, just all culminated. And we decided to get together at the racetrack in August here in Milwaukee. And it was just an awesome day. It was amazing.
So when you're sitting there as a fan, Doug, and you're at the race, you're with your dad, it's what it's all about, right? You're at Road America, which is a great place. Wisconsin fans are great. And now you find yourself wearing a headset and down there, in the pit stall for Santino Ferrucci. How much did your perspective, and I know that you've been around, you were telling me you've kind of grown up around racing, but to be able to listen to the radio activity, when I say radio, I mean Ferrucci talking to his team and the engineers and just kind of being on the inside like that, how much more appreciation did you get for what all goes into a race?
Oh, it's just amazing. I wish every fan could do that once in their lifetime. And the amount of access they gave to us was incredible. And watching the teams pit the car, 4 or 5 times that day, and all the analytics that go into it, and the engineers and the whole process, and the way the pit stops are, it's like a scripted play in football or something like that. And the pre-race, they had their strategy meetings and stuff like that, and it was just awesome. I mean, it was amazing the access they allowed us, and while I was on the radio, I kind of just wanted to give a little shout out to everybody at AJ Flight Racing, and Mary and her mom Ann, that kind of run their communications department. The team was just phenomenal. Got to meet both David Malukas and Santino for a few minutes, and these guys are just, the whole team. It was just an unbelievable experience. The guys were just so great, and the amount of access they gave to us. But yeah, I wish everybody, at some point could just kind of just get an idea or an experience what a race day is like. It's unbelievable how hard these people work.
Now, do you consider Miller Lite and brats to be 2 of the essential food groups?
I would say, yeah. I said around here, I live 10 minutes from Johnsonville brats. I live 10 minutes from Sargento cheese, and and Miller Lite, of course, is a staple and something that we're known for around the world here in Wisconsin. So I'd say that is a food group without a doubt.
Now listen, I want to know this, Doug. Doug Gilman is our guest. Have you been to the Indianapolis 500?
I have not, sir. No, that's kind of a bucket list thing for me. I've been to the Brickyard a couple of times, but I have not. Unfortunately, up here, Memorial Day weekend is kind of a kickoff to the summer up here, and it's an up north weekend and everything, a family weekend, and so no. Unfortunately, the Indy 500. I've been to Daytona 500 numerous times, but I have not been to the Indy 500.
Okay. And I understand, Doug, and you mentioned your dad and everything else, and I certainly understand the family aspect of Memorial Day weekend. Would you this year be interested in attending the Indianapolis 500?
I would be there in a heartbeat if the opportunity was given to me.
Okay,
yes,
what about this?
Yes,
what about this? And I can't top the experience that you had with Santino along pit road. And at times I have auctioned this off, but so I call turn 3 for the radio network, and up there in the top of turn 3, which I think is the best vantage point, you can see 3/4 of the track. It's the biggest area that you can see of the track. I need a spotter. I need a guy in a spotter. The job, not spotted cow, which is another staple up there in Wisconsin. But I need a spotter, and the spotter basically just stands next to me, and then if there's something that happens, hits me in the arm and points. That's really the only responsibility of the spotter. But
yes,
and it's a non-paid position, but you can put it on your resume as an intern. Do you want to be a spotter for the Indy 500?
That's a. Yeah, absolutely. 1,000% yes.
Okay. I'm going to get a hold of you. We're going to try to arrange it, and we're going to bring you here in May and maybe bring you in studio, and you can bring some of that Wisconsin charm down here to Indiana. We need all of it we can get.
I would be honored on the part of all Wisconsin fans and race fans and sports fans around here. I would be honored.
All right. And lastly, can you just give me your best Go Pack Go?
Dun, 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 dun. Go, Pack, go.
All right, Doug. I'll get a hold of you, man. I'm being serious. I appreciate the time, and I'll speak to you soon, all right?
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
All right, again, that's Doug Gilman, who, by the way, he told me owns a pub in Sheboygan, which I think means that we have our dinner plans set for Road America next year. Speaking of the Pack, they, along with the Colts, have to come up with their roster, make it official by 4 o'clock today. What will the Colts do in that regard, and what news do we have so far? Stephen Holder, ESPN.com, joins us to discuss next. There have been no major surprises. Sometimes there are that have leaked out in terms of players to be released from their prospective NFL teams they were hoping to make the roster for on this cut day. They have until 4 o'clock today to make official their 53-man. I guess if there's one that was, I mean, is this a surprise? Tommy DeVito with the New York Giants, he had been kind of an overnight fan favorite a couple of years ago when he got opportunity to play and played okay. And then, of course, he, becomes like a Monday Night Football darling, but he is one that found out that he needs to go see coach and bring his playbook. Who will get that call for the Indianapolis Colts today? Joining us now on the program, Stephen Holder from ESPN.com, who I would assume has a very busy next 24 to 36 hours in front of him. Stephen, let's begin with this. Those so far that we either know or strongly suspect are not going to make the roster for the Colts include who?
I don't think any huge surprises so far. I mean, a lot of the very predictable names have leaked out. I think the one, and I'll tip my cap to Joel Erickson at the Star for this one. It would be, I guess, at tight end. I think that would be the one that you're talking about. We're talking about Jelani Woods there. Now, that was – some people might be surprised by that. I was not surprised. I thought that was where that was going to go. I just thought that other guys had a better camp. And I'm talking specifically about really Will Mallory, because I think that spot really boiled down to that last tight end spot. I presume it's the last one. Boils down to, in my opinion, Will Mallory or Jelani Woods. And I thought Will Mallory was more consistent throughout camp and probably has some upside that he can tap into. He's been healthier. Jelani Woods has been hurt pretty much his entire tenure in Indianapolis. So, I don't think that was a really tough call for the Colts. I thought that's the way that would go. But, we'll see. The day is young, so we don't have all the outcomes just yet.
Wesley French is one of the names that I have seen leak out. That surprised me a little bit because it's at a position where depth is a premium. Your thoughts?
So I thought that one, I kind of predicted that one. I think they have a little more interior depth than they do at tackle. They just do. They have more depth inside than outside. I'm looking for my prediction that I did the other day. I had, let's see, I did not have him on mine. I had Dalton Tucker. Maybe that was a 1-for-1 there, that spot, and obviously Danny Pinter is another interior depth player. So I think those would be my two interior backups, just in my projection. Then I've got Jalen Travis as a backup tackle, and then Luke Tenuta also as a tackle. But I think that offensive line group could be in flux. So what I mean by that is specifically the waiver claim situation. I want to see whether that changes even after we get the final roster today at 4 o'clock. That could still be in flux for the next 24 hours because you have waiver claims. I think they are due by noon tomorrow, and then we would get some news tomorrow afternoon, generally speaking. So
Stephen,
we'll see how that goes.
Let me ask you this. Two things for clarification here, okay? Number one, and I'm just asking you to spitball off the top of your head, okay? More often than not, on average, like let's say in the time that you've covered the Colts, and you can include the Bucs, you covered them as well in this, when a 53-man roster is finalized, typically then over the course of the next couple of days, you see perhaps an acquisition of somebody who didn't make a roster elsewhere, and they say, oh, you know what, let's put that guy on our roster and thus release, player number 53. Typically, how many players on week one on a 53-man roster, how many of those 53 are guys that were after cut or after finalization acquisition? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, just basically how much change do you see between
at the bottom of the
final
roster,
cuts
you
and
can
opening
anticipate
day?
how many guys being in limbo?
I think if you're among those final 3 or 4, you probably got to keep your head on a swivel. That's
Okay.
just how it is. I mean, a lot of times teams do have a pretty good sense of who's going to get cut somewhere else. It may be a situation where, they have some intel, or they've just kind of handicapped the roster, and these teams all scout each other's preseason games, so they know like who's playing with which group and all that, right? They have all the intel because they see it, and then sometimes they actually talk to each other. So, yeah, you do have guys that are targeted. There's no question that they target players who maybe they couldn't get them as an undrafted free agent because they went somewhere else. And maybe the guy ends up getting cut, and there was a guy that they had their eye on as an undrafted guy, and then he becomes available at final cuts. Well, you take a shot at signing that guy. Sometimes you see guys at the bottom of the roster get cut, then they bring them back and put them on the practice squad, maybe 2 or 3 days from now. That does happen a lot. Also, injuries, tend to play into it. What is your injury situation? You'll see some guys potentially today be put on IR. So, that always has some impact on how things go. What's your depth like as a result of that? And when I say IR, I mean IR with the intention of bringing them back.
And
so
Jalen Carlisle looks like he
return.
could be in that position, right?
Yeah, that was trending that way. We just haven't seen him in a long time, and it doesn't seem to be getting better. So it looked like a blow initially, but they've had a couple of guys, I guess, step up at linebacker, and Joe Bocci in particular is a guy that I certainly had no expectations for, but apparently he's had a good camp, and I think he'll end up playing.
Okay, I want to go back to this situation as well, and there's a reason I ask it, so work with me here, Stephen. When Sam Ehlinger was on the roster, okay, so we all knew, I mean, with the exception of that, like, one weird year where it was like, hey, boom, he's your starter instead of Matt Ryan. But you had, like last year, for example, you've got Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson, and then Ehlinger was there, was he the emergency quarterback or practice squad quarterback, correct? Or was he on the 53-man the whole time?
He was generally on the 53-man roster, but he was definitely the third quarterback. And they have altered that rule as of, I think, last year.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify here. And my apologies if I'm asking about the elementary, but that rule that you're talking about, the qualifying rule, when it comes to quarterback and the quote-unquote emergency quarterback, et cetera, that impacts a roster, or that means what for a roster?
So it is important because I think I think you're actually leading up to a Riley Leonard question here.
Correct.
So it matters a lot because, I assume at least, because that third quarterback, they are allowed to be activated on game day. Now, the third quarterback, this is going back to the rule that we all grew up with, which is that third quarterback, he's available, he's dressed, but he can only play if the second quarterback, the number 2 quarterback, is not available. So the first quarterback has to go out of the game, the second quarterback replaces him, and then he becomes unavailable. That is the only scenario where that third quarterback, designated third quarterback, that's the only situation where he can play. The reason you do it, though, is that it does not count against your allotted number of active players on game day, right? So that's the incentive. It's like, I can have this guy dressed and in uniform, and he doesn't take away an extra special teams player for me, among my active players. So it's handy that way. And I think that's why teams have at least some teams, have leaned toward going with that third quarterback because it doesn't hurt you on game day. If you have a situation where you have 3 quarterbacks, but you don't have that allotment in the game day actives, you then have a spot where that third quarterback is taking someone's spot that you may need. This alleviates that problem, so there's really no disincentive unless you just can't afford him among your 53-man roster.
But so here's my question.
Yeah.
Monday through Friday, that quarterback is where in terms of the roster?
He's on the active roster.
Okay.
He's on the active roster.
So
in fact,
the reason I ask it is because, there was always that I'm trying to think of a quarterback in the Colts' recent history where this has been the case, but a guy that's on your practice squad then you activate him, like on Sunday for the purposes of what we're talking about.
Oh, P.J. Walker. P.J.
Okay.
Walker was that guy for like
Right.
3 years. Yeah.
But he's exposed. He's left unprotected to think of expansion drafts, right? It would be my assumption that the Colts do not want to run the risk of leaving Riley Leonard unprotected after what they've seen from him. Not that they anticipate him playing at any point this year, but they don't want but somebody else could. And so therefore, if they like him, they have to utilize a roster spot for him, in particular because, and this is where I'm going with this, Stephen, and then I want you, Stephen Holder of ESPN.com, to tell me if I'm way off base. The possibility that if they think Riley Leonard could be a guy that could play a 2 to 3 game relief role for them at the backup spot, and they say, you know what, at that point our year's probably over with anyway if we're having to go to that, then that allows them to make an in-season trade of Anthony Richardson if they think that that's where that relationship stands. Now, I want you to tell me if I'm being way too Freudian.
So, I mean, in theory, yes. That is what you laid out is accurate in theory, yes. I do think I'll start with this. I do think they are going to keep him on the 53-man roster. And
he being Riley
and really
Leonard.
that just Riley Leonard, correct.
Right.
And that boils down to, you drafted him, you see some things in him that you like. He is not ready to play, in my opinion. And I don't think the Colts disagree. I don't think he's ready to play. I saw every training camp practice. I think he's got a lot of room still that he needs to grow before you could even think about putting him out there. Now, as it relates to the Anthony Richardson part of your question, as we sit here today, the odds, this is just based on what I know of the situation, which is a fair amount, based on my read of the situation right now, I do not think that he is likely to be traded. I think that is very unlikely right now. However, a couple things. We haven't started the season. We have not seen Daniel Jones in regular season action. At minimum, you'd want to see how it's going with Daniel Jones, okay? Because the fact is, we still, look, I know Shane Steichen is very optimistic about this, and that's great. I love that for him, okay? But this is still Daniel Jones, all right? This guy has had a couple of really terrible seasons the last 2 years. Awful. And there are mitigating factors. I am not going to dismiss that. For sure, the Giants have a lot of problems. But Daniel Jones was not good. And that's just a fact. So they need to see what he looks like and see if this is actually viable and workable. And then they know whether this is even something that they should even consider. The other thing is there is a recognition inside the organization that Daniel Jones, too, has some injury history. Nothing to the extent of Anthony Richardson, but he does have some injury history and has missed games most seasons in his career. So that's something they are keeping top of mind as well. So I don't see him being moved right now, or at least a desire to move him, unless things just got nasty there and devolved, and I don't think we're there yet.
I mentioned this yesterday, Stephen. I get the impression when it comes to Anthony Richardson that the Colts are hesitant to even move on from him, not because they believe that he could still be a good player for them, but because they're afraid he would be a good player elsewhere.
Well, it's always a bad look. I can say that. I really think it's a couple things. Number one, they do like Anthony Richardson, but there's also this competing reality here, which is developing Anthony Richardson. It takes time, and I don't think they believe they have time. It's very clear, and frankly, it's very clear to me that Anthony Richardson's agent, who I talked to obviously at length, I wrote a story with his comments last week. My impression from talking to him is that he thinks that Shane Steichen's mind was made up a long time ago. And I don't think that's a crazy theory.
Yeah, I would agree with that notion.
I'm going to say this. I haven't said this publicly. I kind of agree with him. I do. I'm not saying that the competition was a sham, but I think you obviously have a preconceived notion of where you think you're going with a decision, right? When you're weighing two options. And I think he was leaning toward Daniel Jones heavily the entire time. And I didn't necessarily have clarity on that until recently, but there were certain statements and certain conversations that I've had in the past that now when I think about them through this current lens, I got clarity on that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
I-
I believe that. I really do believe that he was heavily leaning toward Daniel Jones the whole time. Now, to wrap it up, what I was going to say about Anthony is that, yeah, they believe in him and they drafted him. They believe there's something there, but I just don't know. They still don't have any quarterback clarity beyond this season, and that's the bottom line. And I don't know that I believe Anthony Richardson is going to be their quarterback in 2026, but they don't have one. So I mean, I guess it's just as likely as anything else, right? So I don't know. I just don't think they have any security at that position, so they're reluctant to just completely close the door.
Stephen, is it unfair of me to say this? When it comes to Richardson, for example, okay, it is my belief, and I have nothing to base this on. I want to make emphatically clear this is simply me reading tea leaves and just my belief, okay, just my gut instinct. My instinct tells me that internally at the top brass that they're over it with Anthony Richardson. Not as a person, not as a kid, not as a guy, not as a young man, just as a quarterback, that they're like, yeah, we've given, we can't wait any longer. And they've moved on from that. And Shane Steichen is one that I think is the spearhead of that, because if you go back and you look, it's like the Sixth Sense. You go back and you look at it and you go, how did we not see this coming? Because he's basically been telling us this for a while now. With all of that said, I agree with you with Daniel Jones, and barring a miracle, even if Daniel Jones is Sam Darnold and all of a sudden they have this season where they go 11-6 and they get into the playoffs and then they get beat 31-9 to the Cincinnati Bengals, and okay, great. Having said all of that, when I look at just the overall, the change in ownership, the quarterback, if it doesn't work out, I wonder if that is not actually, if all of this is not just the seed that they decide to water, that is a complete overhaul of all aspects of the franchise next year and a complete start over. Am I like Chicken Little here?
Well, this is what I can agree with. If you are Carly Ursay Gordon and you are looking at Chris Ballard's miscalculations at quarterback, and then you are looking at Shane Steichen, who pounded his fist for Anthony Richardson, okay? And 2 years later, it's like, no, I'm going to play Daniel freaking Jones, okay? You have a very firm leg to stand on if next year you say, I'm not letting you guys get anywhere near a quarterback decision, right? I mean, that is a very prudent position that she could take. And who could argue with her? I'm not saying it's the right or wrong decision. I'm just saying if that's what she decides, I mean, what case can you make, to argue that she's wrong? That's what I'd say. So I think everybody in the organization understands that, probably up to and including the two men we're talking about, Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard. So they got to figure something out, and they've got to show some positive trajectory at that position this year and change the conversation and change the tide, turn the tide at quarterback, because right now it's all bad. It's all bad. You just can't keep doing this.
By the way, and we will include Stephen for this news, Eddie, the breaking news sounder, please, if you could. This just in a few minutes ago from Stephen's colleague at ESPN, Adam Schefter. Even though he has already won Super Bowls, Travis Kelce has gotten another ring. He placed it on the finger of Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce now officially engaged. Stephen, I know you've been waiting for this for a while, correct?
Is this the biggest transaction Adam's ever broken?
Yes.
Listen, I work with Adam very closely, and listen, we could have one like a little.
Actually,
spread.
He didn't break it. I think they put it on Instagram, didn't they?
Oh, all right. Because I was gonna say, like, I've worked breaking news with this guy, and he's insane. Okay, I love Adam, but the guy is maniacal. But anyway, I was like, I can't even imagine how he would have been if he broke this one, because he doesn't want to get beat on anything. All right. Anyway, I digress. That is a big transaction, though. Big transaction.
Travis
It's
Kelce.
going to break the internet, isn't it?
What's that?
It's going to break the internet, isn't it?
I actually wonder, like, this is going to sound crazy. Does that
Or is it
do
just
anything?
kind of like expected?
Does it do anything for her? And I don't know. When I say this, like the Swifties are going to go crazy, right? Does this in
Right.
any way, shape, or form impact like kind of her aura or her trajectory? Because her entire aura, I think, is the fact that she's like the girl that has like the boyfriends that did her wrong, and she writes songs about it, whatever else. She is I mean, she is obviously one of the most, if not the most powerful entertainment brands in the world. No question about it. But
Sure.
I'm, does that in any way, shape, or form change the trajectory for either one of them?
I get what you're saying. I mean, like, and it's always like, all right, take like the hot pop star, whoever replace her with whoever else, right? Whoever's like the hot pop star that all the guys would love to hook up with, right? If they then hook up with someone like permanently, are they less desirable to the guys? I don't know. It's not the exact same question, but something I wonder maybe like in the shower.
Well, here's the thing, and when I say this, I'm going to show my total ignorance about Taylor Swift, and I have all the respect in the world for what she does. I mean, she is a billion-dollar economic generator for cities. Having
We're
said
in the
that,
same boat here. I agree. Yeah.
I think part of her relatability to a large part of her audience is the fact that she is the girl that never needed the trophy guy, and now she has the trophy guy.
Right.
Does that defy what her brand is?
I wonder. That's a good question. I mean, she might be less inspired in her songwriting now because from everything I've ever heard about Taylor Swift is that she must have had some really doozy of relationships in the past that inspired some amazing songwriting. So I wonder how that's going to work now.
Okay, Stephen, we will start finding out the finality of the Colts roster. I realize they have until 4 o'clock to basically announce that. If I'm not mistaken, and I told Eddie this, it feels to me like last year they were one of the last teams to announce their roster. They don't have to necessarily publicize it at 4, right?
They have to submit it to the NFL. They can tell us 2 weeks from now if they want to, but in theory, yes. So yeah, they tend to wait until the very last minute. That's just kind of what they do, and it is what it is.
Will there be any other major surprises yet? Not that there have been major surprises yet, but do you think we will hear major surprises?
I don't. I really don't. I really think this will be one of the smoothest roster cut downs they've had in recent years. Now, it's still a tough day for the guys who get that bad news, of course, right? But I'm just talking about from the perspective of decision making. I don't think this is going to be that tough. They have a lot of carryover from last year. They have a lot of veterans who have very defined roles. I don't think it's going to be that difficult for them for the most part.
All right, Stephen Holder, ESPN.com. I realize that you will have all of the coverage for it. Certainly appreciate on what I know is going to be a busy afternoon. Appreciate you not only dealing with the questions, but also Taylor Swift conversation. Always fun.
Sure, why not? Sure.
I mean,
it's a big day in American history, isn't it? So,
it is. Yeah. It is. Hey, congratulations to both of them, right? I got nothing against either one of them, to be honest with you. Congratulations.
I like them both. I like them both.
All right, Stephen, appreciate it.
All right, see you.
Stephen Holder joining us on the program. Eddie, your thoughts? You want to chime in on this? Should we get Scott Agnes on the line?
Well, we'll have Scott Agnes on the line in a half hour. I'm sure he's devastated.
I was going to say.
But the Taylor Swift engagement's bad news for me.
Why?
I'll tell you on the other side.
Okay. I'm overly analytical on things sometimes and this is probably one of those, but Eddie, you very coyly said going into the break that this news that now we know that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are engaged, at least according to all of their social media posts, you said this puts you in hot water.
Yeah, so I saw it, and I was trying to get your attention, Jink, but I just couldn't get it. You were just deep in conversation with Stephen Holder about this. So I was waiting. I didn't say anything to Olivia because she's not a big Travis Kelce or Taylor Swift fan, but I got a text from her, and she goes, I have a bone to pick with you, and this is all caps. I'm like, oh, boy. What'd I do? Like, did I leave something out?
Now, for those that don't know, Olivia is your girlfriend. You guys have been, you met where?
College. We met in college. We've been together for 5 years.
Okay.
And so I'm like, oh, what'd I do this time? And then she sends me the engagement post from Instagram. I don't know which one, whose Instagram this is. This is on Taylor's. And she goes, no way, little miss. I can't hold a guy for more than one album got engaged before me. So I'm in hot water, Jake.
Okay. There appears to be a threshold that once you cross it, without getting engaged but being together for a long time, that then like the pressure goes off.
Common law, right? Is that what that's called?
I believe common law means that you have to be living in the same residence, correct?
Well, we're doing that.
I understood, but like I'm not in the common law situation, but
no, you're not.
You know what I mean? This from your only friend Alec. I need Eddie to take a page out of Travis Kelce's book and propose so I can plan him a bachelor party. So does that mean definitively that Alec is your best man? I guess if he's your only friend, he has to be, right?
Well, it's either him or my brother, Jake. I don't know which one that would be.
Okay. I have been a best man. I think I've been best man 6 times. Is that right? Something like that? I give great toasts, and you know, I'm a fun wedding date, but those days in terms of going to weddings, it's been a while. But here's my question, and I realize when I ask it, I would like somebody to call in right now that is a huge fan of Taylor Swift. 239-1070 is the telephone number. I need a Swiftie to call in. Now, we only have 25 female listeners, and I'm not saying that all of her fans are females by any stretch. I have nothing against her. It's not my genre of music, but I know what it's like to go to a concert that is just like a force. And Taylor Swift is a force. I mean, literally, like, economically speaking, what she does when she goes to these cities, it's remarkable what she is able to do. But if somebody is a huge fan of Taylor Swift, my concern is 239-1070 is the telephone number. I don't want to come off like the guy, you know, the generation above Taylor Swift that has no understanding of her and look like somebody that is old man yelling at clouds, sour grape guy. I mean, that in no way, shape, or form is what I want to sound like. I genuinely am curious from a diehard Taylor Swift fan for the question that I want to ask, but I'm afraid that I'm going to sound like an idiot when I ask it. Now, do we have any Swifties that called in at 239-1070, Eddie?
Aaron called in. Don't know if Aaron is a Swiftie, though.
Aaron, how are you?
I'm doing good, Jake. How are you?
I'm okay. Are you a big fan of Taylor Swift?
No, but my wife is.
Okay. So here's my question. And Aaron, now let me ask you this. Because your wife is a fan, did you happen to accompany your wife to a concert of Taylor Swift?
I did not. I actually wish I would have. It looks like a great show.
I totally agree with that, right? I mean, like, you clearly, it's like this 2-hour euphoria, right, for people. What I want to know is, Aaron, and you're not with your wife right now, are you?
No.
Okay. I want to know this. Do you think that your wife will be happy for Taylor Swift, or will she in any way not be envious? That's the wrong way of saying it. But does it in any way, shape, or form like compromise the branding of Taylor Swift because part of her relatability is the fact that she is not the megastar girl that gets the NFL player? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, hopefully no more breakup albums.
That's well.
Well, can you imagine if they get divorced? Oh, that album.
Can you imagine? He's got to know that, right? Which one signs
I would
the
hope.
prenup, right? Okay, so Murphy is next, right? Is Murphy? Are you a Swiftie?
A little bit, man. I've been to a couple of concerts, man. I was security for the Lucas Oil for a few years, and I was able to see her. Actually met her. She bought lunch for us a couple of times at the stadium at the Lucas.
Now, wait. Say that again. There was a little wind there. You said you met her?
Yes. When I was security, I was watching the door, make sure didn't nobody bust in. She was nice, man. She bought us lunch.
Well, that's pretty cool, right? So, now,
Yeah.
so did you actually get to like speak with her, or just it was like she kind of went past and that was that?
Oh no, I spoke to her. She spoke to me, man. It was fun, man. She's real down to earth.
Okay.
Nice lady.
So here's my question for you, Murphy. If you were working security, and I'd like to know this, okay? We haven't said your last name, so you're going to be safe here, right? And it's just you and I talking. Nobody's listening to this program anyway. How many years did you do security down there at Lucas Oil?
I say maybe 3 to 4 years.
Okay. And then have you done that same job at other entertainment venues or just Lucas Oil?
Just the Lucas.
Okay. During that time, I would like to know, well, first off, how were the Taylor Swift shows? Would you list them as entertaining?
Oh man, it was entertaining. I was right by like front of the stage, man. It was the kids was hype.
Okay.
And it was a good show. The dancers and everything. It was a good quality show.
It's a great presentation, correct? Is that the best way of saying it?
Yes, sir.
Now, Murphy, where are you right now? Are you in the bottom of the ocean?
No, right now I'm at work, man. I kind of dipped off to the side, so my boss won't see me.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, before your I don't want to get in trouble here. So I got one other question for you. In the 3 or 4 years that you have been doing security at Lucas Oil Stadium, removing Taylor Swift from the equation, tell me the show that you saw that you have to admit was the best non-Taylor Swift division, and then tell me the show that you said to yourself, this is horrible, and I would be angry if I paid for it.
Oh man, well. I can't say because I didn't do too many concerts. I was more of helping with the Colts also. So one of my jobs was security for the cameraman on the field. So majority of my work was working with the Colts.
Okay. Well, you could actually probably answer, depending on the game, both answers for the Colts, right?
Hey, I got a question for you, Jay. I got one question, man. I just want did you recognize North Central Panthers get their first win?
You know what? So, Murphy, did you go to North Central?
I didn't go to North Central, but my son playing for North Central right now, he's the running back, Zion Murphy. Hey, man, he ran for 118 yards, man, off of 11 carries.
Listen, Murphy.
And it was just exciting.
Murphy, I'm
Yes,
telling
sir.
you, 32-game streak is over. New coach, new philosophies, new attitude, new vision, and 1-0 after beating Brebeuf on Friday. Hail our Panthers. Hats off to thee. And I saw that Dr. White was in the building. Loved it. Loved everything about it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Love it, Murphy. Tell your son congratulations.
You know what it took, Jake, for that losing streak to end? To get a former Uwindi guy in there. Coach Kofor used to be with the Greyhounds.
Oh, really?
Yes.
He is very highly thought of. When I was at North Central speaking to the students there last year, right after he was hired, and he had come in and met some of the teachers and everything else, and I think there's a lot of optimism.
He's a very energetic guy. High energy.
Did you?
We crossed paths, yeah.
Okay.
When I was in college, he was there as their wide receivers coach.
Now, you did not, when you were in college, you obviously were a high school baseball player, Eddie. Did you partake in any sort of intramurals or any sort of sports at UIndy?
I did not, no.
None?
Mm-mm.
Do they have intramurals at UIndy?
They do, yeah.
Basketball, probably some pickleball now. No baseball, right?
I think they had. I can't remember if they had baseball or not, but I know they had flag football, and it was always the athletic trainers always won those for some reason. Yeah.
By the way, my mom is putting the same pressure on me that you just got. Yeah, you know what I mean. I'm telling you,
Olivia texted me, by the way, and said, "Oh, I picked the right time to tune in."
I need female listener number 20, one of our 25 female listeners to call in at 239-1070. One of our I don't want Scott Agnes to have to be our only resident expert on Taylor Swift, right? But Scott Agnes does join us 18 minutes from now. Is when the Colts have to submit to the NFL their list of 53 players. If you are just joining us on the program today, Jelani Woods is one of those that is expected to not make the roster. So too Wesley French. Both are being released in reports from Joel A. Erickson as well as James Boyd as things kind of trickle out, if you will. The other big news is that Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce announcing on social media, because that's what you do in 2025, that they are now engaged. And I have questions, and we have 25 female listeners of this program. 3 of the 25 have managed to call it, and I'm thrilled about that.
Wait a second. Are we sure? I know Colleen for sure is a female listener on the program. Have we initiated Megan and Katie yet?
I believe Megan's one of the 25, has called the program before. Megan leads us off. Megan, have you called the show before?
I actually don't. I don't know if I have, believe it or not.
Do you consider yourself to be part of the 25, or are you possibly 26?
I'm definitely part of the 25.
Okay, so there's only 25 is what I'm getting at. You are not like
No, you have more than 25. You have more than 25.
at 26. Okay, Megan, you are or are not a Swiftie?
I am. I would definitely categorize myself as a Swiftie. Yes.
Okay. And I know that it makes me sound, and I'm being serious when I say this, I don't want to sound completely out of touch with the Taylor Swift phenomenon, because I'm aware of it and I can appreciate and respect it while not myself being engrossed in it. But I am curious if you think, and maybe not for adult women, but for younger girls, does Taylor Swift's relatability or brand in any way become compromised now that she is in a healthy and what hopefully is going to be a permanent relationship?
I don't think so. I think she's 35 now. She's growing up, and if anything, it gives young girls something to aspire to. You don't settle early. So I think she's providing some good lessons to the youth. I really do.
Should that be my answer when people ask? Now, I mean, obviously, Shannon and I have been together for a long time, but when I was close to 35 when she and I started dating, should I just say it's because I never settled early?
I think you could say that. Yeah.
Do you think it's
waiting
weird?
for the right one?
Okay.
Now that could get you in trouble, Jake.
No. Waiting for the right one, and the right one is here. I'm just not. We just have not.
Exactly. You were waiting for the right one until 35. You found her. You're still with her.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
But not engaged is what I'm hinting at here.
Megan, you are also a big Colts fan, correct?
Correct.
I would like to know this. Now that Taylor Swift is getting a ring, do you think that the Colts anytime soon will as well?
Oh, I hope so.
That sounded less than convinced.
Well, it's it's you never know, but it seems like we've got a little ways to go. Seems like we're in transition here, but we'll wait and see. Right?
So you're not thrilled with Daniel Jones?
You got to see game 1, I guess, and see how things go. You just got to have faith in the coaching staff, and it's a great ownership. They know what they're doing, and hope for the best. But yes, I'm a hopelessly optimistic Colts fan.
Okay.
Through and through.
All right, Megan, we appreciate the call. I want to check in with Katie, because you said that Katie is only calling because somebody told her to. I don't think Katie knows this is a sports talk radio program. Katie, are you there?
I am.
Katie, you have no idea what you've called. You just called because somebody told you to call to talk about Taylor Swift. Is that right?
Yes, my husband's listening right now, and he gave me the number and said I have to call immediately and talk about being a Swiftie. I said, I can do that. It's easy.
Okay, Katie, I hate to ask this because I don't want to get in trouble here. You never ask a woman her age. I realize that. But if you were, for example, filling out an insurance form and it had like the age brackets, you were in what category?
Oh, I'm 25.
Okay, 25. Well, she's right with it. Okay, 25-year-old Katie. Okay, so Katie, you probably heard what I was just asking Megan. You have been a Taylor Swift fan for how long?
Since 13 or so. So we're going 12, 13 years almost.
Okay. And the thing about her that you most enjoy or that you most connect with is what?
Okay, I was a big fan of her breakup songs, not like, especially as a teen.
Okay.
And now I also just recently got married, got engaged, got married, all that stuff. So now being able to enjoy her music about being in love while she's also in love is very fun. Okay,
so this does not in any way, shape, or form. You heard my question. Like your thoughts on that in terms of, it feels to me like her career and her songwriting has been so epicentered in female empowerment of I don't need the man because I've been through that and I've become stronger as a result of it and etc. Does this compromise that at all?
No, because she can still be a strong, independent woman that elevates a man as well as elevating herself.
Okay. So that's now kind of where it shifts, correct?
Yeah, it shows that you don't need to be dependent. You can still be strong, independent on your own and also have that growth in a relationship. And the way that he was supporting her on stage at her tour, he came out as a guest star on it and supports her in that way. It could show that, hey, you don't have to diminish yourself because he's the NFL superstar. He can also come to your level and show out on a superstar level on your own turf, own field.
Just out of curiosity, Katie, can you do me a favor here? We keep a running tab on this show of the number of female listeners we have, and we think we might be at 25, but we're not convinced of that. Can you do me a favor when you hang up and turn on your radio to 93.5 or 107.5, both of them work, FM, and just give us 2 minutes of listenership so we can go ahead and tabulate you as one of the 25?
Of course.
Wait. 25 or 26, Jake?
Well, here's the thing. I'm not certain it's 25. Katie would for sure get us to 25. So if Katie can just give us a little bit of listenership, then we know we get to 25. Katie, have you seen Taylor Swift in concert?
I have not, but I've seen the movie of it on Netflix.
Did you go and see that at the IMAX deal, or did you just watch that at home?
At home, and I just found out that I'm actually due soon. My induction date is going to be the date of her upcoming album release on 10/3.
Really?
So I get to have I have a little baby girl at the same time
3rd?
that Life of a Showgirl comes. Yes.
So, October 3rd?
Yes.
Okay, well, and that's child number 1, Katie?
Yes.
Well, congratulations, Katie. I hope for all of you the healthiest and the best in terms of that. So we thank you, and I am very appreciative. All right, let's round it out with Colleen. Colleen, you've called the program before, correct?
Yes, actually, I am your very first female listener. Your very first day on the air, I called in, and you made me CFO because I think you said women were good with money.
That's correct.
And,
yeah, you're the chief financial officer of the company. Yeah, that's right. And there's no funny business going on with women and the money, right? Men you can't trust.
Yeah. I keep a tight wallet. I'm keeping you on the air and on the up and up.
We listen, and Colleen, be honest with yourself. As the chief financial officer, the financial prospects of this company aren't looking any better than the day that you started, and you're actually a little bit surprised that we're still keeping afloat, right?
Well, let's just put it this way. I think your show is doing better than a certain favorite football team of mine. So we're doing good.
Doing good. So let's get to that real quick with the Colts. Your thoughts going into it on the year. It's been a little bit of a rocky road at the quarterback position here. I assume you're talking about the Colts with your favorite football team. Your thoughts going into it here. 17 games, Colleen, as the CFO of this company, your prediction is a record of what?
You want my heart prediction or you want my realistic prediction?
What I know is this, Colleen. You became CFO of this company because you are a calculated and all business, no heart in it. You can make decisions based on what's the reality, not based on the heart. Don't make me compromise your job. I don't want to have to remove you from your position.
Okay. I think we're going to win 9 games.
Okay, 9-8.
I think we're going to win 9 games. I think our defense is going to be greatly improved. I think our offense, as long as the court, and it's so hard to say because I don't know what the quarterback play is going to be, but I'm going to assume that we made the right choice with the quarterback, and I think our quarterback play will be improved over last year. And I think it was Megan you asked if we were going to get a ring anytime soon, like Taylor did. We have a woman in charge now, so I'm convinced we are going to get a ring sooner rather than later because when a woman is in charge, things get done. So I think we're turning the corner and we're heading up the hill. We're going upward.
Okay, yeah, it's like this show. You in order to get where you want to go, you've got to have a woman in charge, like Colleen, our CFO, one of the 25.
Have goals. It's got to be clear cut. So we're going to be okay. This might be a little bit of a rough year, but I still think it's going to be better than last year and the year before and the year before and the year before. And
the problem is, Colleen, as we know, and I appreciate the call as always, the problem is, Eddie, you know it too, When you go 9-8, you find yourself kind of stuck in that vat of suck.
I got two things here, Jake. So number one, I couldn't remember who I needed to call about your spending with, the elixir. So now I know who to call, who has to approve that purchase for that subscription every year. And number two, Jay texted the station 317-239-1070, and he said, as the kids would say, Jake and Eddie, y'all are cooked. Cooked. Yes.
See, I don't know the kid lingo. Does that mean that we're cooked? Does that mean in terms
We're in trouble.
Yeah, well, speak for yourself, right? Now, my mom's not happy. My mom's on board with Olivia and what all of this means. But I promise you, we're going to get back to talking about the Colts. We're going to get back to talking about sports. We're going to get back to talking about the fever. Stephanie White joined us earlier on the program. I asked her point blank about Caitlin Clark's return date, and she, for the first time, I think, kind of opened that door a little bit and gave us a little bit of insight. We will discuss that and probably Taylor Swift as well when Scott Agnes joins us. 2 o'clock hour is underway in Indianapolis. For that matter, the 2 o'clock hour is underway everywhere in the Eastern time zone. Good afternoon to you. My name is Jake Query. Eddie Garrison is the other voice you hear on this program. We call it Query and Company. Colleen is the CFO of the company. We have established now that we have 25 female listeners. Eddie Garrison, do you happen to have the breaking news sounder, please? It is pointed out to me that because of the fact that Katie has in utero a baby girl, that could mean female listener 26, right? Do we count that?
Oh, that's a good question, Jake.
Soon as the baby is born, I'm going to request that Katie make sure that there is some good feeding time from 12 until 3, bottle time with the radio on, and then there you go. Buy one, get one.
Can we get that on our weddings too, Jake? Is there anyone out there offering a buy one, get one?
On weddings?
You can be the buy one and I can be the get one.
Okay.
Seniority first, right?
Okay.
Age before beauty, as I say.
Wait a minute. Okay. I don't think when it comes to if we were to do a buy one, get one wedding, Eddie, and the brides themselves, that we would use the term age before beauty, right?
I don't think so. Not one bit.
Joining us now in the program, I'm sure thrilled to be doing so, Scott Agnes, who himself Scott, is it fair to say you're a Swiftie? Do we have Scott, Eddie?
Well, I thought we did. Hold on.
Maybe Scott Agnes just found out about Taylor Swift, and his shock and dismay has prohibited him from joining the program. Stephanie White was on earlier, and I asked Stephanie White point blank about Caitlin Clark, where things stand, and she said that she would like to see Caitlin Clark practice 5 times before they have her in a game situation. 5 times. Fever in action tonight, taking on Seattle. That game is a 7 o'clock tip. Eddie will have the pregame at 6:45. And later in the conversation with Stephanie White, I said, okay, so if you said 5 practices before you would like to see Caitlin Clark on the floor. And one of the things that Stephanie White talked about was it wasn't as much about timing for her and other such things as much as it was about wanting to see the overall physical endurance that is necessary for Caitlin Clark. And that's why she wants to see her in 5 practices. So I asked the question of, okay, how many practices then has she had to go through? So far, how many practices are under her belt, so to speak? And she said, we actually haven't had any real practices. We've had some shoot-arounds and some walkthroughs since Caitlin Clark has been on the floor, but we have not undergone practices. So you can start to do the math there. When you look at their schedule, 7 games remaining, they're a game over 500 on the Fever with Seattle tonight. If it's 5 practices, then you're looking at even more extended period of time before Caitlin Clark returns. We do have Scott Agnes. He has returned here. Scott, before we get into the Fever, since you are a noted Swiftie, correct?
Yeah, I do enjoy it, for sure. So today's news is certainly massive in the community.
Okay. You live in a Swiftie community, is that right? Okay. I'm going to ask you, and I've gotten the female perspective on this. I'm curious, though. You're a fan of Taylor Swift. What does this do just in terms of the theme and the messaging of, and I'm not saying that any of that is bad, but from my understanding, a large part of Taylor Swift's songwriting and vibe has been relationship-based and notably based in the conversation of failed relationships. She now has found the one, presumably and hopefully, that in fact sticks. How does that change the branding of Taylor Swift?
I love this. A legitimate, funny question, though, also, with all this. Yeah, a lot of it has been absolutely about her relationships and her past and those different things. I'm sure she's an immaculate marketer and an incredible songwriter and then obviously singer-performer. So I have no doubt that she'll adjust and hopefully it'll be more favorable things. But I think that's why a lot of young girls especially love her, relate to her, because they're perhaps she's singing about things they're going through or about to go through.
Okay, so moving on to the Fever. I don't disagree, Scott. I mean, listen,
Yeah.
here's the thing, kidding aside, okay? as the kids say, I'm going to be real here, okay? There was I think a big epiphany for me, Scott, happened when 25 years ago, maybe not that one, 20 years ago, Gen Con, okay? I would see the folks that would come in town for Gen Con, and like a lot of jocks, if you want to use that term, I would snicker at the people that came in dressed like their favorite Klingon or Darth Vader or whatever, walking around downtown, and would go to almost gawk at it and like poke fun of it, okay? And then somebody pointed out to me, they said, you know what? What's the difference between that and the guy that's wearing a Peyton Manning jersey to go to a Colts game? And I'm like, that's a very fair point. And then I thought about it, Scott, and I thought, when I go to Clemson games, I wear a pair of orange Oakley sunglasses. I would never wear orange Oakley sunglasses elsewhere, not because they're Oakleys, because they're orange. But I'm doing it while I'm at the Clemson game, and I wear a pair of like orange sweatpants that are Clemson sweatpants. I wouldn't do that normally, and then I thought, you know what? Clemson is my Gen Con. And who am I to poke fun at other people? You do you. We're all adults. You do you. If it makes you happy, you do you. And I could laugh or snicker at people that get totally into the energy, the vibe, the euphoria of a Taylor Swift concert. But, you know, I went to England and went to those 2 Oasis shows, and the energy and the positivity and the camaraderie that came with being around all of these other people that shared the same soundtrack of importance in their lives as what it meant to me was cool. And so, therefore, when I look at people that go to a Taylor Swift concert, I'm like, who am I to say whether or not that's valid or invalid of what brings them joy? So you do you. So I totally understand that. I'm genuinely curious as to what that reaction from people is about this personal news of hers.
Yeah, and no, I appreciate that entirely in that we all have something we're probably obsessed with. And you'll go to different levels to either show it or to enjoy it, whether it's traveling to concerts or traveling to games. Me and you both do that, right? Traveling for work, all those different things that we enjoy, that all come along part of it for sure. So this it's funny because of the timing too, right? At the start of the season and being on a big transaction day for the NFL and everything. But I'm with you. As long as whatever someone's obsessed with either brings them passion and doesn't tear anybody down or is negative, good for you. Go enjoy it.
Totally. Okay, so let's get to the news about Caitlin Clark. And Stephanie White said earlier, 5 practices. When you look at their schedule, Scott, knowing that now, if in fact they would like to see 5 practices before they can see her on the floor, that to you would lead you to believe that her return could be win. And in addition to that, do you cross over a point where you're like, now it's not as necessary?
In terms of the practices or the return in total?
Well, let's begin
not being necessary.
Let's begin with how long
from the
it could be.
Yeah, from the practice standpoint, I would say you're probably looking at least another week. The thing I wonder with what you referenced with Steph is, what do you classify officially as a practice? Technically, yesterday was a film day, but if you're Caitlin and the staffers, you can easily get in there and get a workout in of some course, and you're obviously going to work in some of the new girls as well, as you're constantly having to sign players to 7-day contracts. But realistically, I'm looking about a week out after this road trip. That is LA, Golden State, Phoenix. You play a Chicago team that this Fever team have dominated all season long, winning all 4 games by an average of like 25 points. A Washington team that is in the thick of the playoff race. And then that last game, Minnesota, the Lynx have already not only clinched, but, I mean, they're probably on the verge of nailing that number 1 pick. And so that would be the ultimate meaningless game from a Lynx standpoint. Right there would be a good 3 games going into potentially the playoff situation.
Because at some point, do you think, and I get it, it's interesting because from a fan perspective and from an organization perspective are 2 totally different things, right? Making the playoffs is one thing. Feeling that you have a legitimate run in you is another. For example, if Caitlin Clark was only available to, let's say, play 1 regular season game that ekes them into the playoffs and then goes into the playoffs, do you believe then that they do it if they think that there is anything other than 100% from a health standpoint?
To me, I don't know if one game's worth it. My thing all along is, given that she is healthy and able to get through things, certainly I think it is incredibly important for her just individually to come back, especially when you factor in how long the offseason is. And like Tamika Catchings back in the day and all those pros, they'd go overseas right away. They're going to Turkey and China and somewhere in Europe to play. Caitlin's hasn't done that. She's not doing unrivaled. Her next action, you're talking like mid-May. That is a lot, both physically after not playing most of the season and mentally for a girl so young who loves the game and is fiercely competitive. I think for all of those reasons and more, if she can come back for at least a couple games, it's incredibly important. And I'll mention, too, my mentality in all this has shifted, seeing others go through it. I saw Paul George do that in 2016, suffered that injury, missed almost the entire season, came back for the final 6 games, and then could go into the offseason not focused on a return, but powering up to the next season. Same thing with TJ McConnell many years later. He suffered like a fractured wrist or thumb, had surgery on it. The team wasn't going anywhere, bound for the lottery, and I think he returned for the final 10 games or so in a season that was not playoff implications. But he said that was incredibly important for him to return from that, and so he could go into the offseason feeling healthy and building upon it rather than the lingering of, okay, my return, how am I going to look? How am I going to feel? You could put that behind them. That's why I think it's important for Caitlin to return if she can.
Scott, what do you think in terms of, we talked to Stephanie White about this earlier, but when you look at the backcourt play for the Fever and the fact that they've had to almost overhaul their backcourt, right? I mean, just based on injury. And I think they've got players that have done a good job with that. But Stephanie White was open about the fact that there has been a challenge of trying to maintain the same style of play. Have you noticed any sort of a pace or stylistic difference with Indiana now having to utilize 3 new guards from the guards that they started the year with?
Yeah, I think you can just see them playing a little bit more basic offense, a lot more read and react rather than offensive sets. I mean, with Caitlin out there, you're playing through Aaliyah Boston so much more. The pick and roll is just killer in there because you sag off Caitlin, there's a 3. You go off, you double team Caitlin, and Aaliyah's slip into the basket for a layup or an easy 5-footer that she always knocks down. I also think with these newcomers as well, there's bound to be a lot of miscommunication. So you're seeing several opportunities out there where a player maybe was supposed to be there. It's the end of shot clock. I think it's slowed down a little bit, and it's less organized in a way that you would ordinarily think of with different play calls and sets and expectations, and much more for them trying to get defensive stops and playing in transition.
Scott Agnes is our guest, Fieldhouse Files, where you can read his work. Scott, the Pacers had a coaching change over the course of really the end of the week, into the weekend. What can you tell us about that? Because initially when I saw that Mike Weiner was leaving, I thought that it was because he was interested in a job in New York. It looks like that is not going to be the case. What can you tell us about changes on the bench for Indiana?
Yeah, so sudden. Less than a month, Jake, before the start of training camp, right? That's not ordinarily where there are changes like this. This is usually done in mid-July. So that was a little bit surprising. I saw Mike when we were out for Vegas Summer League in early July, as usual, as he was out there with the rest of the coaching staff. He's been with Rick Carlisle since 2008. We have not gotten any clarity on this. He has not responded to messages at this point, which is unlike him. And so I'm guessing here that he's just taking family time and enjoying it. It was not the easiest last couple of months for him as he lost his father in the spring. I don't know what kind of factor that maybe played in all this, but it's certainly so sudden that it definitely is not your normal offseason change here. And now promoting Jim Boylan and then bringing in a familiar face for Rick Carlisle, Johnny Carpenter, who was he spent some time here in the Summer League 3 years ago with them and spent a majority of his time at the alma mater of Rick and Jenny Busick at the University of Virginia. But this is a substantial change because he's been Rick's right-hand man, Weiner has. He's handled a lot of the offense, a lot of the end-of-game situations, and a lot of the, let's call them changes. Whenever the referees are emphasizing something or there's a unique way to handle a certain situation, the specialty plays, maybe is what I want to call them, or circumstances. Mike was in charge of all that. So this is definitely a substantial loss for a Pacers team that otherwise, other than losing Miles Turner, has great continuity on this roster.
Yeah, it does. I'm curious in terms of, like, for example, the offensive sets or schemes or areas of assistance. Do we know yet kind of who assumes that responsibility? I know who assumes the seat, right? Or, how the seats are shuffled, but the responsibilities, do we know how that will be divvied?
Not yet, and that's something that's evolved a great deal on Carlisle's staff over the last several years. It was like 3 years ago where he specifically went to a coordinator system, and I think it was last year where he specifically said they're going away from a coordinator system. Yet we do know, Weiner's involvement, offense. We saw Jenny Busek along with Jim Boylan, but primary Jenny at the front of the bench running the defense and getting guys into the right spots. Maybe Lloyd Pierce takes over more. I will say this is such a unique situation, too, in that when Tyrese is out there, he's the one getting them organized anyway. It'd be more the coach into game situations or out-of-bounds plays, after timeouts, ATOs, where you're really diagramming and organizing and things like that. But Lloyd Pierce obviously has great responsibility on this staff. He's the lead assistant, is in all the meetings and those sorts of things. But I think that's something we'll have a better idea of at the start of training camp.
Scott, you have seen Taylor Swift how many times in concert?
Just once. I couldn't get tickets for the life of me the last couple of years. Nope.
So just the one time in Indy, right?
Yeah, that was at Lucas Oil Stadium, I want to say, in 2017 or something like that.
Because I hear a lot of people say that you can get that sometimes, like, the smart play is to go overseas to see her because the tickets are cheaper and sometimes, like, even the hotels and everything, right? I know that sounds
learned about
crazy.
that the most from Laura Steele. I think she did that, didn't she? Go to, like, Spain?
Yeah, I think she went to Madrid, maybe? Yeah.
Yeah,
Spain.
maybe that was it. And the seats are organized. I've later found out if you purchase a seat on the floor, it's just general admission. And so it's all about when you get there. And maybe during the show, you can go to one side to then the other and things like that. And the prices were like a fifth of the cost. So I would have absolutely done that if I knew in time. That sounds like a great excuse.
So as I mentioned before on this program, when I went and saw a concert in England, and listen, I'm extremely fortunate and grateful to have been able to do that. I mean, I'm not by any stretch of the imagination pretending that's something that people are just like, let's just go. You know what I mean? My cousin and I went, and it was his kind of vision, and I will forever be grateful. But one of the things I learned in outdoor concert venues in England is that people like to throw urine all over the place. Now, do you think that would take place in a Taylor Swift concert over there?
No, I don't, nor have I ever heard of that. Are you serious?
Oh, yeah. So here's the thing. I mentioned this before, but it's worth revisiting. So I think this comes from British soccer culture, but an outdoor concert. So this concert that I went to was, they said 80,000. I think it was more like 100,000. If the NFL draft consensus was surveying, it was 1.6 million. But
I'd love that annual bit. I
that's
really
right.
do.
So when you get a group of guys that go to a concert, or gals, I mean, a group of people that would go to a concert in England or a soccer match if it's outdoors, you get somebody that's the beer runner because, like, you're in this compact, fish bowl area. And so they go and they bring back, things of all the draft beers, and so you double fist your beers. I mean, or for that matter, water, whatever you're consuming liquid-wise, but, I mean, mostly beer is the culprit here. And then if it comes time to use the restroom, it's really difficult to, A, get through the crowd, and then, B, find your way back to where your group is. So you use the cups, and then once your favorite song comes on, or a song where you're just caught up in jubilation, you just hoist that bad boy as high in the air as you can. And this is what I learned.
Oh,
this is why if you're going to a concert
that
in
is
England,
not for me.
I recommend.
Oh, no.
That's only like the front 40% of the crowd. So the other 60% are fuddy-duddies like me in the back looking like my cousin and I must have looked at each other and just broke out in laughter like 100 times by just moisture and cups flying everywhere. Crazy.
I'm not even sure what to say to that. I have no interest in that, but I did have interest in going over to those concerts. I mean, whether it was Taylor, Ed Sheeran, I think would be phenomenal.
Yeah, I don't think Taylor Swift fans are doing that per se.
No.
What upcoming do you have working in Fieldhouse Files?
Yeah, so we had Tyrese Halliburton back in town over the weekend, so that was great to talk with him. And also been going to work on a feature. I asked Caitlin about rehabbing and being there right sidestep with Halliburton, and then I was able to ask him about it. So it's remarkable, Jake, how
he's
this
out of the boot, correct?
He does not have to be in it full time, but for example, during his camp on Saturday, that's how he was getting it around. He is not.
Okay.
He can go in shoes, but not full time. He's off the scooter is the main development, but he
Gotcha.
is still on in a boot and such. But those two have been rehabbing essentially together in the weight room together, and so I think that's a unique story about how high everybody in this town was and things were going, and now the two biggest stars are rehabbing and doing so somewhat together.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff for sure. All right, Scott, appreciate the time as always.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jake.
We will take a look and find out more in terms of cut downs for the Colts. Obviously, they have until 4 o'clock today. I have not seen since we have been on the air whether or not there are any of those, Scott, Eddie, league-wide that have been announced that have been overall surprises. I mean, Isaiah Simmons, who was a top 10 pick a couple of years ago in Arizona, didn't work out for him there. He's one of those that, and at some point, teams, one would think, are going to get on board with this, and that is, I understand falling in love with just overall versatility and athleticism when scouting out players at the NFL level, but at the same time, it's one thing to be an athlete. You still got to be able to play the game. And I just think that there are players that they get an opportunity because people are like, oh, man, this guy just, he's an athlete that can cover ground and et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, yeah, but you still got to play the game though, right?
I've been refreshing Joel A. Erickson's Twitter feed religiously, Jake. Ulysses Bentley IV, no update yet. As of right now, he's still on the roster.
Yes, it's my understanding, Ulysses. Now, a lot of people are curious as to what exactly. My understanding is he actually went out himself and today is playing in a croquet tournament in the Highlands. And so he's not even worried about whether or not the phone rings. He's just going to let the process fall as it may.
Isaiah Land was waived by the Colts today as well.
This, by the way, from Cody earlier on the text line when I was talking about defensive backs. Terrible take by Jake, LOL. Ballard's first pick was Malik Hooker, Quincy Wilson, Rocky Sin. Brent's Ballard can't evaluate secondary either. I'm just saying a year ago when he said that he needs to see the guys that he has in the defensive backfield before he can make a determination. I thought last year some of those guys, Brent's being one of them, Jalen Jones being one of them, I can appreciate the fact that he said, look, we got to go out here and let these guys play. And I thought that was in retrospect, that was the right approach. In retrospect, the right approach. Hey, Jake, this is Marcia. I'd like to add to your female listeners. Tried calling but couldn't get through. Marcia. We love it. Thank you. You are officially, Marcia, female listener number 26. Eddie, do you happen to have the breaking news sounder by chance? This just in, we now have 26 female listeners. Love it. So, Marcia, welcome aboard. We're happy to have you. Marcia maybe is a longtime listener. I'm not sure. I do agree with this that came from Pennsylvania. Anthony Richardson is done in this city. It's time to march for Arch. Only problem with that is, number one, I will stand by this. I don't know that Arch Manning would come here. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't know for certain that Arch Manning would come here. But more so, I don't think the Colts are going to be in that position. Number one, I think Arch Manning is going to go back to Texas next year. Would not surprise me at all. Number two, we haven't even seen Arch Manning play a full season. And we have no idea. The pedigree would indicate that he's going to be one heck of a player, but we don't know that for certain. And number three, you're going to have to be, if he does turn out to be that guy that is worth like the March for Arch, then there are other franchises you're going to be contending with that are all going to be in that same situation and wanting to take him at the top of the draft. I just hope this. Listen, when it comes to Arch Manning, I hope by all account, that he is a wonderful player. I don't have any reason to believe he's anything other than, I mean, his grandfather, Archie Manning, is one of the true gentlemen to ever play the game. And I remember vividly, I do not know Archie Manning well, disingenuous to say that I do, but I've been around him a fair amount of times just from his time when Peyton Manning was here for so long. And I recall once I was working a golf outing. There was a golf outing, and I don't remember who it was or for what it was for, but I was working at Channel 6 at the time and went out to cover this golf outing. And we do what we call a VOSOT, which is where you get a voiceover and then a sound on tape is what it's called. You folks have seen this on the news when you're watching the local news, and they show you, they say, earlier today, da-da-da, and you see video, and then they say, afterwards, Archie Manning had this to say. Boom, that's a VOSOT. So I go out to get a VOSOT because Archie Manning was in town for this golf outing. So I go out, and he's like on hole 18 or whatever, 16. It was a shotgun golf tournament. And I'm interviewing him. And we had taken a golf cart out to find him on the golf course. They knew we were coming. I interview him, and then it just so happened he needed, I can't remember the circumstances, but he needed a ride back to the clubhouse. And he says, well, I'll just ride with you guys. And it was myself and the photog, and it might have been his partner as well, whoever he was golfing with. So anyway, at any rate, I ended up in a golf cart with Archie Manning for a 3-minute ride. And during that ride, he told me this story that I just thought was so cool. When he said, I'll never forget when I was at Ole Miss, my mother would write me a letter every week. And every week in the letter, she would close the letter by saying, don't forget to always remember to be kind to people, because the day is going to come where you're no longer Archie Manning. And he said, and she was right, because my playing career came to an end and I was living in New Orleans. And he said, and I was very quickly just becoming another guy that was Archie, the guy that lived in the Garden District, as opposed to, the Saints legend and whatever else. He said, and then he chuckled and he said, and then Peyton got to college. And then I became Archie Manning, Peyton's father. But he had such a humility and down-to-earth nature about him that it led me somewhat to be surprised when Eli Manning spurned the Chargers and said, like, no, I will not sign with you. And I still don't know the exact reason of that. I'm sure it's out there. But then when Eli Manning was here for the Super Bowl and Archie and Olivia Manning, Peyton Manning and Eli Manning's parents were here, and that was during the uncertainty of Peyton Manning's future in Indianapolis. And in covering that Super Bowl and being on Radio Row and talking to him then, he was very grounded. I'm talking about Archie Manning, and just down to earth and matter of fact and realistic about the uncertainty of all of it in terms of his family's history and place in Indianapolis and et cetera. He has never been anything other than a completely humble, appreciative, down to earth gentleman. And he is the grandfather, obviously, of Arch Manning. But because of the situation with the Chargers, I understand also I think Peyton in particular was very hurt by the way things ended here. And I know that Peyton Manning has come back and done all of the things that are necessary when the Colts have asked or wanted him to do so, and fans are appreciative of that. But it would not surprise me if Arch Manning did not want to play here. You know what I mean? I don't know that. It's just a gut. But I think that there are a million other teams that are going to want, if he is in fact what we think he is going to be. But I hope the best for him at Texas, mostly when they open up, because I hope he wins their opening game by 28 or more, because they're playing Ohio State. And I think Ohio State's still going to end up in the college football national championship this year, regardless of what happens, but that's talk for a different day. All right, we will cruise it. We will let you know the latest on what's happening in terms of NFL announcements and potential releases over the next 90 minutes as we return here on Curry & Company. So I'm assuming that if you are Ulysses Bentley the fourth, if you are, I'm trying to think of other players that, I mean, I think Riley Leonard's safe, but I'll just throw him in for the sake of it.
Yes, Jake.
See, you like, do we have Ulysses Bentley's reaction to my doing the voice for him, by the way?
I have to go pull it.
What do you call it when you get a steak sandwich and there's the juice on the side? What do they call that?
I don't know. Is it au jus or something like that?
Au jus, by the way, is apparently released.
A Joe. That's his name.
No, I know, but it's au jus.
It's a Joe.
I know, but I go with au jus. Same spelling.
Out of respect for a Joe.
Well, we don't have to say it anymore, right? He has been waived. This, according to Joel A. Erickson. Isaiah Land waived, according to Joel A. Erickson. Also, Sean McKeon, tight end, waived. Stop me if any of these are a surprise to you. Defensive lineman Marcus Haynes has been waived. Oh, no. Landon Parker. He was one of them early on that I was pulling for Landon Parker. I don't think we ever saw Landon Parker step on the field, to my knowledge. Landon Parker's been waived, wide receiver. Okay. Here is one that is a little bit surprising. If you look at their defensive back room, Eddie, and you look at fringe defensive backs, are you looking at their roster by chance on their, like, the depth chart for their roster? Although that may have been, what's that?
Yes.
Who do they have listed in terms of their defensive backs and their corners specifically?
Your starters would be Travarius Ward, Jalen Jones, and Kenny Moore.
Okay.
The backups, Xavier Howard, Mekhi Blackman, and Alex Johnson, who was released/waived.
Okay, how about their nickels?
And Juju Brents. That would have been Alex Johnson and Chris Lamons, who was on the roster as well. Samuel Womack was waived earlier.
Chris Lamons was getting a lot of time during preseason. Chris Lamons waived. That surprised me a little bit because he's been there. He's kind of been, has he not, like a guy that they've given some time to? Coleman Owen released. Wesley French, that one surprises me a little bit because he has been a guy that has played on the line for them. They've utilized him in a couple of different ways. But at the same time, Wesley French at the center position, because of the fact that Danny Pinter obviously was in front of him, but if you need Pinter as an insurance policy anywhere else, French becomes valuable at that spot and has been there in the past, but he is gone.
It's the end of an era, Jake. No more French fries.
That's exactly right. Well, Fries is out too, right?
He is with the Minnesota Vikings.
That's what I mean.
Yep.
So
it's the official end of an era.
Once the Fries are gone, who needs the French? Is that what you're saying?
Uh-huh.
Can they get a guy? Was he hoping for somebody whose last name is Toast? Then the big one also is the fact that Jelani Woods is expected to be released. I don't know that that's an overly surprising move with Jelani Woods. It just, Woods is a guy that it was a third-round pick. He was a big tight end. He was kind of in that Mo Alley Cox mode of like basketball-sized tight end, that kind of thing. Had played quarterback in high school, was injured not once but twice, sat out 2 seasons due to injury, and I think they wanted to really give him time and opportunity before they could make full assessment, and now they have been able to make that assessment and clearly decided that just didn't fit in that room because you got Mo Alley Cox, obviously Tyler Warren, Drew Ogletree, and Will Mallory. And I think Will Mallory stepped in front of Jelani Woods in that depth chart, and therefore that's where that decision was made. So more kind of coming out here in the last couple of minutes in regards to those. I just still don't think that there's anybody that's going to jump out and really shock you. We have had that in the past where there are guys that you go, whoa, wait a minute, that surprises me. But I I don't anticipate that that's going to be the case.
They're going to have to do something on linebacker, Jake, because of Jalen Carlies being on IR. So right now,
have they officially done that yet? There was thought that they were going to put him on IR with intention of return.
Obviously, these won't be officially announced until sometime around 4 o'clock or later. But the expectation is he'll be on the IR with the designation to return. So the healthy linebackers right now for the Colts that they have, based off the reporting that we've gotten from Joel A. Erickson and James Boyd and others, is that it's Cameron McGrone, Zaire Franklin, and Joe Bacci. Those are the only linebackers on the roster. I could be wrong there, but those are the only three that I believe are still around.
The other thing, Eddie, that you have to keep in mind is the fact that when you see the 53-man roster that is submitted to the NFL today at 4 o'clock, that does not mean that that's the 53-man roster that you will see opening up on September 7th against the Dolphins. Because, and I will, Steven and I talked about this earlier, I think it's somewhat safe to say or estimate that the bottom three, perhaps, could be players that are not, their name is not being submitted today at 4. They are picked up from elsewhere as they cycle through waivers, and therefore then, the Colts pick them up. And there's always a player, you think about, I'm looking right now, November 23rd at Kansas City. Wouldn't it be the most Colts thing ever if on November 23rd at Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes, by the way, never beaten the Colts, if the Colts go in to Kansas City, and I'm not even saying win the game, but shockingly play well and are like right there in the mix with Kansas City, and it's because of some player like a corner that makes a key interception, or some running back that comes in because Jonathan Taylor's hurt, and maybe it's Ulysses Bentley, whatever, that comes in that was a fringe 53-man guy that's a late sign, and it's like, what a story this is. Here's a guy, Jonathan Williams, or, one of those players that just Brad Pyatt, like, comes out of nowhere and makes a play, and you're like, yeah, that was a guy that was left for dead by Seattle or Carolina, and the Colts picked him up, and now here he is, and in mid-November, late November, they're going into Kansas City and Arrowhead in a raucous environment, and this guy steps up and makes plays. Next man up, those kinds of things. I mean, we have seen that before. John's in next. We'll hand it off to him, find out what he's got planned for his big program as we roll along here. Tuesday edition, Query & Company. I'm telling you, I'm actually kind of nervous for Ulysses Bentley the fourth. It's been a long time since there's a player that I've more been rooting for to make the roster.
Well, Derek Slukwa last year, you were rooting for him.
I know, but that was we kind of had a pretty good idea there, did we not? Right?
True.
This chair is very loud. Is that translating over the radio?
I don't know. Translating?
Yeah, transferring.
The one that does is when you're moving your mic.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I won't move my mic anymore, although it helps if I bring it over to a little bit closer to here. You know what I mean? I thought the answer from Stephanie White was very interesting when I asked her about the number of practices that they have had since Caitlin Clark started, like, kind of, putting the shoes back on, so to speak. And the reason I say that,
she said no live practices for her yet.
Correct. And she said she wants to see 5 of them before she gets onto the floor.
Yeah, I think that's the first time she or anyone has publicly stated what the baseline or the benchmark is that they want to see before she returns.
And that's the thing, is that makes me wonder, and I probably should have asked this specifically, but how many opportunities for practice are there going to be when you look at their schedule, right? I mean, that's the thing that jumps out at you of, well, wait a minute, if you want to see 5 live practices, how many chances are you going to get? Because they obviously in action tonight, taking on the Seattle Storm, right?
Yeah, it's a huge week for them, Jake. Tonight, 7:00, I'll have pregame coverage right here at 6:45. Of course, they play Seattle tonight. They have the head-to-head at the moment over the Storm, but things are so convoluted right now for spots 6, 7, 8, and then Los Angeles, who's out of the picture now, looking in for the last couple of spots with less than 8 games to go, because if the Fever win tonight, then they would be 6th in the standings. If they lose tonight, then it becomes very dire with how the things are looking, because in terms of teams around them, Fever have the head-to-head over Seattle. They do not have the head-to-head over Golden State or Los Angeles, but they do have a game left against each of those teams coming up on a West Coast road trip that starts on Friday against the Sparks, Sunday against Golden State, and then concludes on Tuesday in Phoenix.
By the way, if you are interested in going to a Colts game this year and you do not have Colts season tickets, there's a chance that you can do so, because, and you'll hear me talking more about this leading up to it, but our friends at Premier Weight Loss Indy right now have for September. If you sign up in September for an initial consultation at pwlindy.com, not only are they waiving the sign-up fee for Premier Weight Loss, but in addition to that, if you use my name, and I'm begging that you do, I'm asking that you do, I'm requesting that you do, John obviously as well, but if you do, then you get entered into a drawing for Colts tickets against the Arizona Cardinals, and those are 8th-row tickets, so very, very good seats, and we would love, no matter which program it is where you hear about that from Premier Weight Loss, if you are going to go in there and get that free September consultation and sign up. Once you sign up, you are entered for that drawing. JMV has arrived. He is checking probably right now to make sure there are not any last-minute cuts that he was unaware.
You're Mr. Oasis over there. Are you one of the Gallagher brothers? Are you a lost Gallagher bro?
Let me zip this up.
Man.
Now I am.
You are.
Listen, you mentioned it yesterday. It's 55 degrees out when I left the house this morning.
There's no doubt.
Had to
that
wear a zip
sucks.
up.
You can't tell me that people actually like this crap in August. It's not supposed to be this way.
I would agree. It feels like late
October.
September.
It feels like October.
But it's going to get back to normal, though, right?
I don't know. Is it? The problem is you got a lot of pools out there, and it's going to be out of sight, out of mind because of football coming up here on Saturdays and Sundays. That's what sucks. I mean, it's like a premature ending.
Excuse me.
to our summer.
Okay.
Premature. I've got a great deal of history with premature endings
but not
to
with,
our summer.
Not with the roommate from Bedford, right?
Oh, yeah. With Chloe the cat. She got knocked up by somebody else.
Yeah.
She didn't give me the time of day.
Now, did you ever meet the fella?
I did. Yeah, I did. I think they've long since been divorced. She's awesome. She's a good girl, but she had a long-haired Himalayan cat.
Really?
That only came around when I opened a can of tuna. I was a big-time tuna eater out of the can.
Uh-huh.
So
excellent protein, yes. What's on the big show today, John?
Little rake straw. I got to do college. I've got to do high school with Greg. I know Friday number 1 was pretty exciting, and then Joel from the Star is going to join us with the cuts. Very ordinary cut down day, isn't it? It's
So
really
far.
nothing.
Yeah, so far. Ulysses Bentley the fourth going to make it?
Practice squad.
I think that's probably it, right?
That's probably a lot of these guys that get cut will get brought back to the practice squad.
Right.
I would imagine.
That
So,
practice squad's not bad money, though, man.
I would take it. What is it? What do you get paid, Eddie, on the practice squad, buddy?
I thought somebody said that if you go the year on the practice squad and then get called up for Sunday, 4 games or something that you can make, it's like close to 200, right?
Nice. Hey, you're going to bring Shannon to Mystic Waters on Saturday night for the JMV takeover?
I unfortunately.
What?
Here's the thing. I'm going to be in Nashville for IndyCar, which leads me to believe that Shannon probably will be at Mystic Waters.
Well,
Right?
yes, that'd be awesome. Have her come up. I've got a cabin.
Really?
The cabin's rocking. Don't bother knocking.
Listen,
I've got a
that turned
cabin.
uncomfortable quickly. Right?
I've got a cabin up actually for 2 days, Friday night
That's
and
cool.
Saturday night.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful up there, right?
It is awesome. Brent Halverson and
Brent's
Lisa.
had that for what, 2 or 3 years now?
Yep, they do a great job with it, and there will be plenty of all that you need for the Labor Day weekend bender, the 3rd annual this weekend.
That
Very
will
excited.
be fun. The takeover. Do you have a theme for the takeover?
I think we'll probably go most of the time when we stick with the 80s, everybody likes it, but we may go all over the map. And a shout out to Dan Pantos, who's going to be back here doing stuff too, so I can count on him. It's going to be awesome too. We're going to be up there on Friday with the afternoon show. Sid's in Noblesville, Tavern Tour stop on Thursday. Greatness.
Awesome.
Yes.
Be a lot of fun. All right, John's up next.
Yeah, buddy.
We'll get you caught up. You got an hour before the Colts will have to submit their roster to the NFL. We will break all of that down tomorrow and also get into some college football talk. Alex Karras joining us tomorrow. Tom Diemhart.
Karras?
I'm sorry, not Alex Karras. Ted Karras. Sorry. Yeah. Emmanuel Lewis will be on with us. Sorry about that. Ted Karras will be joining us from Marion tomorrow. And as well, Tom Diemhart will join us tomorrow as well. We thank you for listening to Query & Company.